Good evening, everyone. I will call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order here in Council Chambers at 6 p.m. I do not believe we have any remote electronic attendance, but we do have oaths of office. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm certainly excited to bring forward to you today two officers that have completed their probation. The first officer is Michael Viner. He grew up in Rock Island and graduated from Rock Island High School. After high school, he attended Blackhawk College, where he majored in criminal justice. And for the 5 years prior to joining Moline, he was a security officer at Unity Point, being promoted to charge security officer. His first day was September 8th, 2021, so it tells you how long it takes us to hire, onboard somebody, train them, and them to complete their probation. And so Michael is here today with his brothers James and Dave, his mom Lisa, and his wife Katie. So Mayor, if you would, I'd be honored if you would give him the oath of office.
If you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Michael Viner,
I, Michael Viner,
having been duly appointed as a police officer
having been duly appointed as a police officer
for the city of Moline, Illinois,
for the city of Moline, Illinois,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of police officer for the city of Moline, Illinois,
of the position of police officer for the city of Moline, Illinois,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations and thank you.
And then we have a busy house here tonight, so I don't know if his wife was able to make it into the, oh, right behind, oh, there you are. If you want to come forward, and you may pin the badge on your husband. Katie, if you want to join him, you can take some photos. Anyone else?
Welcome
you
on
have
board.
there, you can jump up there with.
Congratulations.
If anybody wants to join you there for,
Congratulations.
take a photo?
It's no pressure, no one's watching. Camera two.
We'll do that.
All right, Mayor, our second officer is Officer Matthew Binkley. He grew up in Forreston, Illinois, graduated from Polo High School. After high school, he attended Augustana College, where he majored in biology and psychology. And most recently, he was employed as a security officer for Allied Universal. He was also hired in September 8th, 2021, went to Police Training Institute, and is now completed his probation. So, be honored if you would give him the oath of office.
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Matthew Binkley,
I, Matthew Binkley,
having been duly appointed as police officer
having been duly appointed as a police officer
for the city of Moline, Illinois,
for the city of Moline, Illinois,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of police officer for the city of Moline, Illinois,
of the position of police officer for the city of Moline, Illinois,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And complete his mission, I'll get his badge on his uniform. Right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Congratulations. I look afterwards to see what damage I've done.
Thank you, man.
It's all good. Yeah, it's maybe four. It's good to see all three grades.
Okay, our next item is item number 4, board appointments. There's the mayor's appointment of No Hannah Nyang to the Citizens Advisory Council on Urban Policy, or CACUP, to fill the unexpired term of John Schaaf to expire July 31st, 2024. There's the appointment of Mitch Goering to the Special Service Area, number 5 board, to fill the unexpired term of Kevin Belk to expire January 1, 2025. And mayor's appointment of Joseph Ton to the Moline Commission on Youth to fill the unexpired term of Janet Zam to expire March 31st, 2025. And the mayor's reappointment of Jan Erickson Vroman to the Moline Commission on Youth for a full 3-year term to expire March 31st, 2026. And next we have presentations. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could have Detective Griffin come forward. Those of you who've been around, many of you know Detective Griffin, one of the most successful detectives here at the Moline Police Department, has done outstanding work, and you'll notice that by all the medals that he has on his uniform today that we're going to add one more to. For approximately 1 year, Detective Griffin pursued the 28-year-old Stephen Asplin missing persons case using new investigative techniques. Lieutenant Rea had nominated him for a Meritorious Achievement Award, and his perseverance, critical thinking, collaboration, and dedication led to the successful resolution, bringing closure to the Asplin family. Stephen Asplin was last seen on January 9th, 1994, and a few days later his car was found at Leach Park in Bettendorf, Iowa. The case became static and no information came in for years. In November 2021, Detective Griffin systematically investigated the recovered unidentified remains along the Mississippi River from Moline to Tennessee using the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System known as NamUs. During his investigation, he discovered a male white body that had been recovered in March of 1994 in St. Louis County. The unidentified remains had on clothing that matched the description of the last known clothing worn by Mr. Asplin. However, there were some discrepancies. In collaboration with Dr. Lindsay Trammell, a forensic anthropologist with the St. Louis County Medical Examiner's Office, it was determined that the entry made in NamUs was incorrect. Working with forensic scientists, a bone sample from the unidentified remains was obtained and compared with the Asplin family's DNA, and on September 6, 2022, the Illinois State Police reported their findings and determined the unidentified remains in St. Louis County discovered on March 21st, 1994, were in fact Stephen Asplin. Detective Griffin illustrated innovation, critical thinking, and a strong desire to serve the citizens of Moline throughout the investigation of this case, and is deserving of recognition. On behalf of the entire department in the city of Moline, I was honored to receive this and approve him for the Meritorious Achievement Award. Additionally, we received a statement, and I published this at the time of the case back in September, but a statement from the Stephen Asplin family. I'm just going to read a portion of that to illustrate what this case meant to their family and the work that Detective Griffin put into this. Thanks to all the media for shining light on Steve's disappearance over the past 29 years. The news, while bittersweet, will allow us some closure. We will still think of Steve every day and miss him just the same, but these answers will provide comfort to us and his friends. We would like to thank hundreds of people who attended vigils and helped with the searches when he first disappeared. We'd like to thank the Moline Police Department and all the detectives who have been involved over the years, but we would especially like to thank Detective Mike Griffin, who's been working with us for many years now. He stayed in touch, he's communicated with us even when there wasn't anything new to report. He's a good man, and his compassion and concern for getting us answers has always been obvious. We feel blessed when he became involved in this case. So, on behalf of the Moline Police Department and the City of Moline, I'd like to present Detective Griffin with the Meritorious Achievement Award. Detective Michael Griffin, the Meritorious Achievement Award in recognition of your perseverance to innovate and implement a new investigative technique to bring closure to the 28-year-old missing person case of Stephen Asplin. And in addition, a Meritorious Service ribbon for his uniform.
I just want to say thank you. I don't know, I can't imagine being a alder or a council member, mayor, city administrator. You find out a lot of thanks you get, but you guys earmarked money for our cold case budget, and as a result of your guys' belief in Chief Galt, we've solved 3 cold cases, and I know the Asplin family is very appreciative. So on behalf of them, thank you very much for believing in us and giving us the money and the resources to do what we've been able to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course.
Yes, Chief, you have another.
I do. I just want to
Another
note that I was
recognition,
upset that the fire chief took so much time in the last meeting, so
He logged it
I'm
up
sure
this
that I was
week.
able to. Mary Shady, would you come forward, please? So Mayor and City Council, those of you that spend a lot of time in the city driving around, no doubt have seen Mary Shavy for the last 50 years as a crossing guard. And what better way to honor public service than to be a public servant guarding children walking to school, which she has done day in and day out for the last 50 years. We are so blessed to have what, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alderman Waldron, the longest serving city clerk 50 years in front of us here today. And we certainly couldn't let that milestone pass by without some recognition, some thanks, because crossing guard is not an easy task, right? The job is split into a morning shift and an afternoon shift. It doesn't pay well. She didn't do this job for the money. She did it for the community, for the kids.
I love the kids.
And it shows. And I can only imagine all the kids that you've seen walk past you that now have kids.
My daughter, when she was in grade school, yeah.
That now probably have kids as well walking by you.
Oh, yeah, third generation.
Third generation.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're so proud of you and really thank you for your service to the community. And so on behalf of the City of Moline and the Moline Police Department, I wanted to give you an award, commitment to service recognition presented to Mary Shavy for 50 years of dedication and loyalty on behalf of the City of Moline Police Department.
Oh, I don't want to be cheated. Thank you, Mr. Shavy. Congratulations. Congratulations.
He's been doing that since I was in grade school.
You needed a crossing guard. Crossing guard.
Wrong school, though. That's
Okay, that takes us to 5.3, which I believe is Mr. Dryer, Infrastructure Management Services Presentation.
Good evening, everybody. You previously received the PCI, or Pavement Condition Inventory report, that was commissioned by the city and prepared by our consultant, Infrastructure Management Services, or IMS, and they are out of Arizona. IMS reviewed the city's street system and completed their field inspection. They did this with an automated laser and camera system, all packaged within a customized van that ran the city street system this past spring. They analyzed over 230 miles of city streets and prepared the final report, which they will review a summary tonight via Zoom, and will be able to answer any questions. So we have Dan White of IMS with us here tonight using Zoom, and he will go over the results and the models that was developed for the city's use. So, David and Dan, can you take it away?
Definitely. Can everyone hear me well?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. I will share my screen. All right, great. So yeah, good evening, Mayor, council members. Thanks for the invitation to present on the State of the Roadway Network. As mentioned, I'm Dan White, Client Services Manager with IMS, and let's jump into this. So quickly, we'll cover a little bit about the current conditions of the road network, the core principles of pavement management and technology, and how IMS and our engineering firm turns that data into usable information for the engineering team. So quickly, let's take a look at the overview of pavement conditions and what that means. So IMS, we utilize industry standard method to assign each street section a 0 to 100 PCI score. So that score is based on the combination of 20 pavement distresses and the extent and severity for each roadway segment or each block. So you can kind of see how that scale goes from 0 to 100 right there. And taking a quick look at the overview of the pavement conditions there in this distribution graph. So the city has an average PCI score of 62 across the entire roadway network. To give you some perspective, our clients in the U.S. have an average PCI score of about a 65. So the number there, the backlog number, represents streets that need full reconstruction. And that number did come in a little bit higher at 16% than the average. Most of our clients are about 10% for that number. So again, on that 0 to 100 scale, 0 is failed pavement, and 100 is an excellent brand new street. So let's keep moving along. So our process and, what is a pavement management program? So to effectively manage such a large asset, which a lot of agencies, they don't forget, but they don't realize how large of an asset it is. It's the city's largest asset. So, and it depreciates just like any other asset. So there's a blend of actions to develop the pavement management policy, quality data, and understanding of the best practices, and the local budget constraints and policies that will affect those funding levels. And the point of pavement management is to keep the good roads good. So we want to identify the critical point in time to apply a rehab at the right time and in the right place. So the common thread here, we want to extend the usable life of the pavement to save us some money over the 5, 10, 15, 20 years, short term and long term. A little bit about our data collection process. So we utilized what we call a road surface tester. It has state-of-the-art technology, laser technology at the back that automatically detects pavement distresses. And we utilize that information to ensure that the data is repeatable and it's representative across the entire network. So our engineers and the PhDs and PEs that love staring at cracks all day, they can really understand the true health of the pavement and, again, make those tough decisions on what roads to keep in good condition going forward. And just a quick look, I won't spend too much time on this, but just common pavement distresses that we're picking up. So these next couple of slides show these distresses, raveling, bleeding, and the various types of cracking. And each type of these distresses has a specific impact on how that roadway is going to deteriorate. So a distress like alligator cracking here and the wheel pad budding, so those have a greater impact on the life cycle of the road. And roads that have higher alligator cracking or rutting, well, they're not going to last as long. And a standard overlay is really kind of putting like a Band-Aid on top of a problem. And that's typically not a great idea. And just quickly cruise through some real-life examples from what we picked up driving the roadways. So an excellent street, like new, you just want to keep those roads watertight, do some crack sealing. That's the cheapest way to keep it in good condition going forward. A good street with a PCI of about 66. So this is a good candidate for a mill and overlay, do any panel replacements on the concrete roadways to keep them functioning well and get a little extended life out of it. And then a fair road, so these are roads that go down into about PCI 55, a little bit lower. This is the last chance you have to do a mill and overlay. So basically kind of think about, an oil change on your car. You want to keep it operating well. You don't want to just let the engine blow up. So spend $1 today rather than $8, $10, $15 tomorrow. And then roads in the very poor and poor category, PCI of 40 and below. These streets typically need full reconstruction, so that obviously means that has the heaviest burden on the capital improvement programs. But again, with these streets, the cost of deferral, which means how long can we defer that cost? Well, this asset, we need to fully reconstruct it. We're not going to lose any further value on this roadway, so we hold off on some of these roads to focus on keeping those good roads good. And just look at some of the big picture summary data. So this distribution shows overall a bit of an aged roadway network, pretty similar to a lot of our clients throughout Illinois and the Midwest. And an important step is taking a proactive pavement management approach instead of a reactive approach, which the city has done by working with us. So again, we want to really look at the budget realities and understand what the critical needs are to get the best bang for the buck. And how did we do that? How did our engineers look at the data, do an analysis? So as I mentioned earlier, the pavement management program requires a defined set of goals and procedures, and these points on the list allow us to work with the city staff to make those defensible decisions in the end. And how did we develop our maintenance and rehab recommendations? So the engineering team, they review the current local practices, look at the cost to perform the various rehabilitation options, and then they analyze that data, look at the big picture, not playing any favorites, to provide multiple budget scenarios and to understand what the impact will have on the overall network over a 5-year plan based on our data. So it's a customized process that we really hone in on the details. And as part of the report, we kind of look at, okay, what do these budget scenarios say? So this chart depicts a few annual budget scenarios and what the average PCI score will look like over a 5-year period. So if you see that red dashed line there at the top, that basically says, all right, we want to maintain our current backlog. So that budget will require about $7 million per year. And then if the city had a blank check to write, to get all the roads over 5 years, take care of them, get them all up to a good PCI, that'd be about $144 million, just to give you some perspective. And this is another way to take a look at the data and do a quick comparison. So this is looking at, based on our current budget and recommending what roads to target. The red distribution there shows the current average condition, where the blue shows where the city will be in 5 years' time based on the current annual funding level. And lastly, I'd like to just quickly cover, some of our recommendations. So while the current budget will maintain, a manageable network, you won't be chasing scale in the near future. The city should target a budget to maintain the current PCI and, in the long term, reduce that backlog or the roads that need that full reconstruction. So there's just a couple scenarios there of about somewhere in the $5 to $6 million range annually that could keep us at a pretty good steady state budget. So term and the long term. So with that, I know it's quick, but I'm ready for any questions and chat a little bit more.
Thank you so much. Are there questions from the council? Yes, Mr. Wentz?
With that increase in budget to try to keep the PCI the same, the backlog looked like it went up. What was that due to? I think it went from maybe 16 to 18% or 19%.
18 to 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that current budget, just because based on the pavement management principles, we want to allow those roads that are nearing falling into that more expensive treatment bucket. We want to bump those back up. So the budget was really based on keeping that backlog as low as possible.
So if I understand you correctly, in order to keep the PCI, like the whole network at least stable, we would end up increasing the backlog just a little bit because of the expense of what we have right now.
Correct. Yep. Because the backlog is a little bit higher in the current budget, you just really can't target too much of those reconstructions. But again, over time, by studying this up in this method, we'll get a lot of those streets up into the higher, very good to excellent category where we can start building in some more of that backlog over time.
Mm-hmm. So actually taking a chunk out of the backlog requires much more than 5 years, number one, and construction costs to come down. Correct?
Correct. Yep. Inflation's not our friend right now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Wayne?
Now this is not just budgeted, but this is actually spent because we've had a history where we budget stuff, but it gets kicked to the next year or whatever. So that is actually that we need to spend this much. So if we're really spending, 75 or 80% of the money that we're budgeting, then we're going to need to budget more to actually hit the amount that you're suggesting.
Yep, correct.
All right.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay, hearing nothing, we very much appreciate you explaining that to us and taking time with us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, we will move to our proclamations. One is a repeat from something we engaged in last year, the Wayland National Mayor's Challenge for Water Conservation. And that is our first one, declaring April 2023 that month. I believe this is for you, Mr. Lodi, yes?
Yes.
Did you have anything you wanted to say before I made this?
Yeah, real quickly, I'll just say that the Wyland Foundation is an environmental watchdog. They do work to initiate projects that will advance environmental improvements. And so they have a mayor's challenge, and last year Mayor Rhea Putty challenged us to apply for and engage in this challenge, and so she re-upped the challenge this year and asked us to re-up our efforts also. So we've got a number of things that we're going to do. We're going to do a social media campaign. We're going to combine our efforts with what we do with the water art contest. So we'll be in the public school, elementary schools, promoting conservation. And then also we've partnered with the library where we're going to do some programs with the library to also promote conservation during April. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And if y'all recall, the Mississippi levels were quite low last year, so I think it remains relevant. So the proclamation reads, whereas water is our most valuable natural resource, and whereas conservation of this resource will serve to protect the long-term vitality by protecting our drinking water resources, and whereas conservation minimizes water pollution and health risks, and whereas conservation helps to maintain healthy aquatic ecosystems, whereas the Wyland Foundation has challenged mayors across the nation to participate in their 12th annual Water Conservation Challenge, and whereas each resident of our city is called upon to help conserve water and is to participate in the community effort to protect our most valuable resource as part of the Wyland National Mayor's Challenge. Now therefore I, Sangeeta Rayapati, Mayor of Moline, do hereby proclaim officially the month of April 2023 as Water Conservation Month in the city of Moline, Illinois. Thank you very much, Mr. Lodi. And we'll get that to him. And the second proclamation is for our friends at Junior Achievement. Is there anyone here today from Junior Achievement? Okay, seeing none, we'll make sure they get this. Whereas the city of and if you're all familiar, JA is quite active in the area, going into our schools, et cetera, teaching financial literacy, et cetera. Whereas the city of Moline will observe Junior Achievement Day on April 6, 2023 as an opportunity to recognize and celebrate junior achievement of the Heartland for empowering our young people to own their economic success. And whereas Junior Achievement of the Heartland's educational contribution equips our young people to become the next generation of productive employees and self-sufficient citizens to ensure the economic prosperity of Moline. And whereas it is fitting for parents, educators, businesses, and other members of the community to join in Junior Achievement's effort to ensure the future success and economic health of our young people and the communities in which they live, now, therefore, I, Sangeeta Rayapati, Mayor of Moline, do hereby proclaim official recognition of April 6, 2023 as Junior Achievement Day in the city of Moline, Illinois. So thank you very much, Junior Achievement. We move to public comment. Chief Galt?
Rodo?
Okay, you have 3 minutes at the podium. Chief, you're on it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Frodo, and I'm just here to give a public comment regarding the proposed road diet between 27 and 12, all the way to, I believe it's 41st and 12. So first off, thank you for making our roads a lot safer by doing the proposed road diet, by turning the 4-lane into a 3-lane with a center lane. We're eliminating the need to stop when you're making a left turn, because we now have a dedicated lane to make those left turns. That means that drivers behind you won't try to proactively pass you using the right lane or the parking spots that are available right now. So after that, I think especially when going uphill, drivers tend to try and pass one another because it's merging. And eventually, if one vehicle tries to turn left again, sometimes drivers tend to not even indicate that they'll pass you through the right, and that sometimes creates an inherently dangerous situation. But other than that, I timed myself, and it looks like I talk too fast, but other than that, that's all I'm here to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you even state his full name?
Oh, yes.
Sure. My name is Frodo Abad.
Thank you.
You can spell it.
RODOABAD. That's B with beta and D with delta.
Thanks. Thank you.
Leroy?
Leroy Trout, 3542 12th Avenue, Moline. We, the homeowners, have few options for parking when entertaining. There are no alleys as are present in other neighborhoods. If it isn't safe for parked cars, why would it be safer for bikes? We now experience cars driving up the parking lanes, so what would prevent them from driving up the bike lanes? The city hasn't enforced the speed or the driving up those areas. The study shows speeds are not the issue. But if you ask any residents who live on 12th Avenue, everyone would disagree. We experience this hazard every day. And Matt Tinman, you have your own agenda as a member of the Quad City Bike Club, as put out in the emails, and are not for those who you were elected to represent. We would appreciate the support of in voting to support those who live on 12th Avenue. We have few options for additional parking. Our property values and the safety our property values and the safety of 12th Avenue. While we are avid bike riders, we would never trust the safety of riding on 12th Avenue with or without bike lanes. We would appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Amy Stoneburner. I live on 12th Avenue and 36th Street Court. My number one concern as a mother is the safety and accidents. I live on 12th Avenue. I am a stay-at-home mom. I homeschool my children. I am home all day. I don't see any bikers. I see accidents. I constantly see accidents. As a matter of fact, last year there was an accident where a car rolled into my barely front yard that I already have. Had my children been out there or was any closer to my house, it would have hit my house. It would have went right into the house where my children sleep. That road is dangerous already. There's already enough accidents as it is. They don't use the lanes that are there. They speed up, they try to race each other where it merges, and they go into our yards to beat each other. We have no yard as it is. You guys want to take the yard that we do have in the front. You guys want to take away the parking for the people who don't have alleys, who don't have side streets, no other access. Where are family members supposed to park? My mother is handicapped. Where is she supposed to park? I don't have access in the back. So what do you guys care about us or your own agendas? We pay taxes. We, the people, don't want this. You guys are trying to force something on us that we don't want, and then you want us to make us pay for it. So I get less property for more taxes. Why would I want to stay in Moline for that? Why do I want to stay here and continue to pay more taxes? We just had a bike path put in, so is our money wasted on that we just spent to increase it more, to increase our taxes more, to decrease our property value? You represent us, not yourselves. And don't forget that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Hi, my name's Charlie Parker. I live at 3532 12th Avenue. I'd like to thank the people that responded to my email. I'm against the road diet. There's too much traffic on that road already, and funneling more bikes on that it's going to result in more confrontation between cars and bikes. As far as the parking goes, I live right in the middle of that, between 34th and 41st Street. I have no, if my driveway is full, if I have people over for Christmas or Thanksgiving, they're literally walking over a block to get there. I suggest a compromise, something that we could, it's difficult to make everybody happy. You basically can't do it, but you can make everybody a little bit unhappy. And I think maybe that's what we should try to do here. And as far as Mr. Timmerman, I know you're a member of the biking club and organizer. Maybe you should consider reclusing yourself from this vote on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Craig?
Hello, everybody. Craig Loken, citizen of Moline. I've been here since August of 2021, having moved here from Chicago with my young daughter and family. And so I'm here to speak in favor of the road diet, and I just want to call into a couple of pieces here. About road diets increasing crashes, I've got a study from AARP that talks about that specifically, and it talks about them reducing rear-end collisions and side-swipe crashes by slowing vehicle speeds by 3 to 5 miles per hour. Further, road diets decrease by 70% the frequency of people driving more than 5 miles over the speed limit. Data collected on road diets in 2 very different settings, several small towns in Iowa and a group of larger cities and suburbs in California and Washington state, confirm that road diets improve safety. The research showed that 47% reduction in crashes in Iowa towns and 19% drop in crashes in the more heavily traveled corridors of California and Washington. So I would say, based on the stats of other towns that have done this and the fact that it actually reduces speeds, which is in the intent of the road diet, I don't believe this is a biking change. If it was a true biking change, there would be painted dedicated protected bike lanes. That's the only way that you're gonna actually increase and promote biking in this city. Short of that, I believe it will reduce speeds throughout that corridor. Now, as a citizen, I drove that corridor today. I live right near the YMCA. Not a single car was parked on either side of that road from 41st Street to, I believe it was 34th. So to think that we want to reserve that much space of land for an occasional gathering, I think would be a poor use of our space. Further, I'll say, given the cost of maintaining our roads in the city here, I would challenge us to maybe reduce our roads footprint, maybe 10%. We could start by eliminating one-way roads or retire roads to pedestrians and other uses. I think that would be an acceptable use of our space in this city, give it more green space, reduce the ongoing costs of maintenance, and provide for a better, safe overall experience. Lastly, last 40 seconds, we have somebody, I don't know if she's still here, that spent 50 years as a crossing guard. I can assure you that if we gave her the ability to speak on it, maybe not, I can't assure it, but crossing 2 lanes of traffic versus 4 lanes of traffic unequivocally would be safer for children in that area. So again, I would strongly urge you all to vote in favor of this road diet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim?
Hi, Kim Bush. I live at 1105 36th Street Court. I think one of our main concerns would be for our neighbors that are not able to park there would be now parking in my court. Because I do know that they do park in front of their homes. Unfortunately, the time that the gentleman spoke before me rode by there, there may not have been any vehicles. There are vehicles that park there, even at their own risk. I bike around the city. I would say a parked car is probably the least of my concerns. The road hazard of the debris or a pothole or the things that are on the road are my biggest concern. How am I going to deal with a great big bump that has been trying to be fixed and it's been filled in, and how I have to manage that versus an obstacle of a large vehicle that is parked in the roadway. That I can steer around that, and I use my mirror, and I'm able to do that. The speeds on 12th Avenue are definitely a concern. We've lived here now a year and a half, and I grew up in this town, and I do know that area is definitely an area where people just speed through. And I don't know if there's any kind of a way to minimize that versus a designated parking or a designated bike lane. I'm against it. I really would feel for my neighbors that would be parking now in front of my house. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dick?
Thank you. Dick Potter. Albert Einstein once said, "We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them." And we have created problems in areas like 12th Avenue for years and years and years by encouraging lots and lots of cars. And as I was here last time, I spoke about the fact that, corridors like that are for all forms of transportation, not only cars, but bicycles and pedestrians. I live in the area. I live a block and a half from 12th Avenue. I drive, bike, and walk the corridor often. In the last couple of weeks, I've been up there picking up trash. And I can tell you that there is speed there. But road diets work. We've already proven that on 19th Avenue. When the road diet was enacted on 19th Avenue, traffic slowed down noticeably. I've heard that the same thing has occurred on 7th Street. I don't travel that street very often, I can't speak to that. Just west of this area, in the 80s, parking was removed. And all of the people there, as is spoken here earlier, those folks were left with only their alleys. Most of these people basically have a garage and a small area. You can drive up and down all of these subject properties that these people are talking about. Every one of them has a 2-car garage, which holds 2 cars, and probably room for at least 4 other vehicles in the driveway out in front. It's a lot less of an, for them to have to give up parking than it was for the other people. And I just want to remind you that the road diets work. I think it's excellent public policy, and I would encourage you to support it.
Dean?
Dean Mathias, and a member of the Complete Streets, Moline Complete Streets Committee, class of '69, Moline. I live in Milan right now, but I'm the Bi-State Trails Committee member. I encourage every citizen in this room to work towards a win-win-win situation, not just a win-win, but a win-win-win situation. That goes for better speeds along that corridor, better safety along the corridor, whatever it takes to get the residents happy and provide safety for any bicyclist that wants to get through that corridor, be it a family. I don't know how a family can move for that corridor one side. If you have any sections of this town that a family can't move through, what's the reason a family wants to move there in the first place? So you need to think about the families. And I love biking, and I admit that, but I love just being outdoors. And I would hesitate to irritate anybody in this room, but I've heard other possibilities as far as agreements. I was a chief negotiator for the Rock Island teachers for a number of years. And I can see that there's a consensus to be reached in this room right now. And if you can't do it, I feel sorry for you, because I think there's capable brains here that can do it, can work it out and listen to. There's a lot of safety issues on 12th Avenue. Speed is one, as I hear a lot of. And somehow that has to be addressed, #1 priority. And whether it has to do with cyclists, it'll get anybody that's walking that corridor, driving that corridor, a resident raking their lawn, etc. So I just go for the win-win-win philosophy. Dean Mathias speaking, check it out. And if anybody else would like a Quad City bicycle map, I brought a few more of these. And hopefully someday there'll be bike lanes on 12th Avenue with the satisfaction of everybody that lives along 12th Avenue. Thank you.
Dennis?
Hello, my name is Dennis Platt, and I live in Davenport. And I came here today to share with you my experience of living on a road with a road diet street in Davenport. I lived in Comanche and worked in Rock Island for 13 years, and then I moved to Davenport. And the reason I moved to Davenport was because of this infrastructure, because then I could ride my bike to work every day. There's a road diet on Jersey Ridge Road in Davenport, and I moved there, and I would ride that down to the Mississippi River and get on the bike path and cross the government bridge and go into a truck terminal in Rock Island. I retired there in 2015, or I'm sorry, 2017. I retired there at Old Dominion. And so I commuted to work sometimes 6 and 7 nights a week to Rock Island because of this infrastructure. And otherwise I would not have. Well, who cares? Well, when you have bicyclists out on these streets in these residential areas, it's good for that area. A lot of us carry cell phones, and if something weird is going on, we take pictures. A lot of us have video cameras on our bike, just to make sure that if something happens to us, there's a record of it, and police can untangle it. a lot of us are just like everybody else in this room, and we care about what happens to our residential area, to our community. And so, in a sense, there's nothing selfish about it. It helps us, it helps everyone. Something else I guess I wanted to just talk about is, I've heard a number of references to the bike paths, to the multi-use paths that we have here in the Quad City area. And we are very fortunate to have that investment. But the truth is, we can't afford to have that kind of infrastructure connecting all of our destinations. When it comes to people like me, elderly people, disabled people, families, young families, people with economic challenges, not everyone can afford an automobile, and not everyone can take 3 hours a day to navigate these cities on a city bus. And, the reality is that providing basic infrastructure to enhance the safety of our communities is an economic issue too.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you very
patience. You have a great day.
Alex?
Different topic. Good evening, Your Honor. Members of the council. I am asking this evening, I want to start out with my ask is that you not take action on item 15.4 tonight, the EV charging requirement. As you know, Renew Moline acquired through a donation the JCPenney building in August of last year, and we embarked on an aggressive schedule to deliver you a catalytic project for downtown. Residential is the only feasible use right now in our downtown environment. We have a lot of vacant office space. And on December 28th, we chose Bush Construction as our development partner to walk through that process. Since that time, we have had weekly meetings with the entire team, including city staff. We have had multiple other related meetings. We went to PMT last week and brought a project. That project did not include an assumption that we had to put EV conduit in. So I'm encouraging you to please postpone action on this item to give us some time. Maybe you want to use the JCPenney project to identify what the real costs are of that requirement. You don't have any information, neither did the Plan Commission. The staff report I saw said that the impact, the discussion of the ordinance would require only the installation of conduct, which is easy and inexpensive. And I can assure you right now, nothing is easy and nothing is expensive. We have a multitude of other issues that we are dealing with as a project team on a daily basis, and we are trying very hard to make sure that the form-based code and the requirements of that are going to be implemented with this project. We want to be an example. We want to be your partner. I'm standing here as your partner to ask you to not take action on this tonight. We don't know what the impact is. We have a better sense of what the form-based code impacts are because Ryan, Bob, Leslie from Codemetrics have been great about spending time with us, walking us through, but there will be impacts. There have been cost impacts. And our ability to deliver you the project that we have, the catalytic, beautiful project that we want to deliver to you is risked when we don't have time to assess the impacts, the financial impacts of well-meaning and laudable policy goals that end up in an ordinance. An ordinance is a very heavy-handed way of doing things. Maybe you want to consider incentives. Maybe you want to just leave residential projects out for now so you can get some residential projects. The project we've been talking about with JCPenney is the most significant thing that potentially since the LeClaire Hotel has been constructed in downtown Moline. That's what we're hoping to deliver to you. So I would respectfully request that you not take action tonight. Give us some time either to assess the costs on this project and bring it back to you with factual information about what you are voting on. And I stand here as your partner. I'm committed to working through the issues of the form-based code, those things that the form-based code creates for us, and we will stand here until the first shovel's on the ground, but I would respectfully request your reconsideration of item 15.4 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie?
At the meeting approximately a month ago, there were about 15 homeowners that objected to a bike lane. We have no access in the back for additional parking or access to the back of our houses. Sometimes I wonder if in the case of a fire in the back of one of our houses, how the fire department would get to it. There's just no place for additional parking. Voting for this would take away our right to entertain or to have company, to have people to celebrate Christmas, birthdays, any kind of an occasion. And this year would be the 30th year that I have hosted Christmas for our family and friends. I had pictures of my neighbors. They're hosting Thanksgiving, and Joe, the man that spoke at the last meeting, has those pictures, so I don't have them with me. There were approximately 15 cars on the north side of the road and 2 or 3 on the south side. And where would these people park if you take away our parking? And we also have a young couple that moved in across the street and from out of town, and they have, if they have company, their friends, family come for the weekend, there's no place to have them park either. At the meeting a month ago, our Alderman Matt made the statement that there had been multiple fatalities in this section of 12th Avenue, and I questioned that. The only one that I can remember in this area, on our area, was about 10 to 15 years ago, and it was around 2 o'clock in the morning, and 2 young boys that had recently graduated from the high school were killed and it was due to bad decisions.
Thank you so much. Your time is up.
I'm done?
Yeah, the time is up, sorry.
Okay. Can I say one more thing?
We have to be
Okay.
fair to everybody, sorry.
I would like to know how much, there's a bunch of us that would like to know how much money the city of Moline is making or getting to do this.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
That's it, okay, thank you, sir. That concludes public comment. So we move to questions on the agenda, and I have 2 items. One, we're pulling 15.4, the EV readiness ordinance, from the consent agenda to the non-consent agenda, second reading ordinances, for Alderperson Wentz request. And then we are pulling 18.2 completely, that's the cannabis dispensary, because we need a resolution included on our next meeting to increase the number of licenses like we do with the liquor licenses. So we have to have that done at the same time. Okay, we move to informationals. Chief Galt, 90.1 Crisis Containment Unit Bearcat G2.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have some guests with me tonight, particularly Lieutenant Colson, who will speak as well. So over the last 4 years that I've been the police chief here in Moline, my focus has been on analyzing the capacity, capability, and culture of the Moline Police Department. And I brought you several initiatives that we've worked on together to provide top-level public safety to our community. We've added social workers, a therapy dog, gun unit, ballistic forensics, citywide cameras. We've done a staffing analysis, policy enhancements, and accreditation. One area of concern that I've had was the equipment and capabilities of our tactical response team, known as CCU. We've been able to get them new body armor. We have a plan to buy them new helmets this year through budget. And we've improved training, we've upgraded hostage negotiation equipment, and much more. But up until now, we haven't been able to close a gap in equipment to respond to high-risk incidents. And that puts our officers' lives in danger and our ability to respond and protect our community at a significant disadvantage. So with the help of our partners in Rock Island County and Bettendorf, we've used their equipment, particularly a Bearcat, for the last 17 years. But now I'm happy to report with the partnership of Bettendorf, we're going to be able to close that gap in equipment, and we're going to be able to do it with zero tax dollars and zero impact to the budget. A Lenco Bearcat G2, as pictured similar up there, is a tactical response vehicle that is completely ballistic protection. Bettendorf owns a 2014 Lenco Bearcat, which is a Ford F550 with a armor-plated shell to it. This is a standard vehicle in U.S. SWAT operations. It contains no weapons. It is just a armored vehicle. The original price for this vehicle was $240,534. Of course, those costs have gone up since then. Oswego PD just purchased one for $251,000. Chicago PD purchased one a couple years ago with some additional enhancements for $399,000. And interestingly enough, Pennsylvania, a town in Pennsylvania, just bought a refurbished one from Lenco for $171,129. Extremely expensive investment for communities to do. But the armored exterior on there will stop bullets, including 50 caliber, and it transports 14 people. It's very similar to what you see every day. In fact, I saw one today down at the bank of a Brinks armored vehicle, right, that transports money safely to and from different banks and depositories. So we've been using the Rock Island County ILEAS 2006 Bearcats, pictured above there on the right side of the screen. Very similar to a Brinks armored car. And in fact, the history of tactical teams is they used to either use or bought decommissioned Brinks trucks in the first armored vehicles. They offer ballistic protection. They are a defensive vehicle to protect human life, rescue or evacuate from a crisis, and provide a safe workspace for negotiation. We have been using this vehicle in Moline over 35 times for the past 4 years. And I just want to highlight that it is not armed. It is not an MRAP, not a mine-resistant vehicle. It is not military grade. It is not a tank. There's none of those things that I have circles that they are not. It is a rescue vehicle and a tactical workspace. So our tactical commander is Lieutenant Derek Colson. I'm going to have him tell you just a few additional details.
I just want to start off by thanking you all for the opportunity to present in front of you. The first thing I want to go over here is give you a brief overview of what CCU is for those of you who are not aware. The Moline East Moline Crisis Containment Unit, CCU, it's a multi-jurisdictional tactical team comprised of police officers with advanced training. You probably heard of it as SWAT. CCU members receive this advanced training and equipment to resolve critical incidents that typically exceed the capacity of normal patrol officers. Currently, we have 19 members with Moline and East Moline, and we average 20 to 35 call-outs per year. As you can see up here on the slide, some of the tactical considerations we have in Moline, we're often tasked with getting members into these, we call them open-air environments, these large environments, safely, and we're tasked with getting people out of there safely as well. Wrong way. All right. CCU operations are obviously they're high risk and they require a lot of supervisory oversight. There is a unit commander at the rank of deputy chief. There's a tactical commander at the rank of lieutenant, myself, and there's team leaders. So each operation that we do has to be approved by the unit and tactical commander. Team leaders often develop an operational plan, and that, again, has to be approved by the tactical commander. The plan is then discussed with the entire team in a room. The things that we discuss are the case history, the targets of the investigation, some structure concerns, hazards, and what method we're going to use to execute this operation. So I can tell you this is not a fly-by-night operation where we jump in an armored vehicle and do an execution, right? This is very planned. There's a lot of oversight. So in order for CCU to be utilized, the operation must meet our threat matrix. The matrix is a scoring system that is nationally recognized by the National Tactical Officers Association. So things taken into consideration, you can see above here on the slides, are the background of the targets, the crime committed, were their weapons used, are there victims or hostages, etc. So not all situations require a CCU team, and certainly do not require the use of the Bearcat. So if a situation does not meet our threat matrix, then that situation will be mitigated through other police tactics. So obviously the Bearcat's only going to be used in high-risk situations. Like Chief Galt said, it is a transport vehicle, it is defensive only, and its main goal is to protect human life. I have team leaders and operators here today. I can tell you this, we don't get an extra stipend, we don't get extra pay, we don't get extra benefits for doing this job. They're on call 24/7. They get woken up in the middle of the night and they sacrifice a lot of their family time. I think we would all agree we would like to transport them to these high-risk situations safely and transport them back. And not only just our members of our team, but the citizens that we serve. The Bearcat really is just a safe place for us to work where we can de-escalate and mitigate some of these high-risk situations that we have. Like Chief Galt said, we've used it for 17 years, and we're going to continue to use it. There have been instances, though, I can tell you this, where we have called to use it, and it's not available. Having direct access to this vehicle would guarantee the use and provide safety for our officers and our community. This equipment is typically used when there is significant risk in the operation and involving firearms. I'm sure you guys it's no secret the Quad City area has seen an increase in gun violence. Unfortunately, Moline is not immune. I'd like to put a bubble around our community, but we can't. But I can tell you one thing that we do well is we target these individuals. Chief Galt 3 years ago initiated a gun unit. Before that gun unit, our department seized 12 to 15 firearms a year. In 2022, we seized 122 illegal firearms. In 2021, we seized 88. And in 2022, we seized approximately 110 illegal firearms. So you can see these statistics. We're dealing with a lot more individuals who own illegally owned firearms. I'm going to end with a couple case highlights. I could go on and on about the highlights of the operations that we've done. Chief Galt's given me some experience here, and he's teaching me not to ramble, so I'm going to give you two. I'll move on. Patrol responded to a call of a person threatening their neighbor with a gun. CCU was notified, and the Bearcat was called. The Bearcat was first utilized to evacuate all the surrounding houses. So we got them out of their house safe, made sure they were safe, and then we used the Bearcat to safely mitigate and negotiate with the suspect, who eventually came out peacefully. I'll give you one more. Recently, there was a critical incident that occurred at the intersection of 16th Street and Avenue of the Cities. We all know that's a very busy intersection. A male produced a handgun, fired it in the air, and stood at this busy intersection. Several bystanders, motorists, business owners, business travelers were potential victims of this person. Having direct access to that Bearcat, we could have responded in minutes and began using the protection that it affords us to evacuate civilians and control and contain the suspect. The current response time that we have for the Bearcat would be much longer if it's even available. And I'm going to give you one more very quickly. I can't say much because it's an open investigation and it occurred yesterday while I was working. We had an incident where a woman and her 9-month-old child were potentially being held against their will with a man with a gun. We used a squad car to evacuate from the second floor. She threw her baby to us and jumped out of a window with a squad car. Again, this is an instance where we could immediately respond with that and mitigate that. I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Galt. Again, I thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you.
So we wanted to give you a little bit of background so you've completely understood where we feel this is an advantage and the operations that are currently taking place in our community. So the plan is to purchase the Bettendorf 2014 Bearcat for $75,000. Credit Lieutenant Colson for bringing this to me, and he entered into some initial negotiations to see what they would do. They are buying a new one. The option that they had to trade it in or sell it on the market, and the Bettendorf is willing to sell it to us for $75,000 rather than turning it in. That would allow us to keep that asset here in the community for our partners in other communities, as well as the city of Moline. We would house it at the Moline Police Department. We were going to use asset forfeiture funds, and so those of you that don't have a lot of familiarity with asset forfeiture, we cannot supplement the budget with asset forfeiture, but we can buy equipment and add something that we couldn't have purchased because it wasn't budgetary available. There are a lot of restrictions, but for law enforcement purposes, we have the money available to do this. I would not use any tax dollars. It has no budgetary impact. East Moline is a partner with us, a much smaller footprint. They only have 5 officers on the team, but their city is willing to contribute $5,000 to the purchase. So ours would be 70, theirs would be 5,000. I've spoken to the Public Works, little to no impact on Public Works. They're already capable of servicing Ford vehicles, as you know. They already have lifts that can lift that weight because of the fire trucks. They can handle all of the routine maintenance, which is very low, like under $1,000 a year to just do the routine maintenance. This vehicle only has 5,000 miles on it. As you know, we're not driving it around on patrol. This is a response. So, and this is a very rare opportunity for us to obtain this for our community, for the greater Quad City community, be an asset, and save $200,000 as opposed to a new one. I can also tell you the Rock Island County one was obtained through an ILEAS grant after 9/11, and Deputy Chief Heisen is here if you need to ask him any questions about that, but it's somewhat on its last legs, right? It's been around for a long time. It's worn out. So this improves the safety for Moline, improves regional safety and response capabilities. And finally, I'll just close with this. This doesn't change our operations. Whether we own it or not, we have to use this vehicle. This improves our capabilities, improves our capacity, and strengthens public safety in the city of Moline. Thank you.
Thank you. So you'll be bringing that back
Yeah,
as a budgetary, for
So
approval?
the plan, just have an invoice that would come through the council agenda
Yes.
to purchase that, and the line item would come out of my asset forfeiture funds.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Chief? Thank you for that very thorough update. We appreciate understanding the whole picture.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on to 9.2, discussion of Chapter 2, Administration of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 4100E, excessive absenteeism.
Thank you,
To the
Anna.
alderpersons.
Alderman Williams and I had a quick discussion about this, but I had a number of people from commissions reach out to me asking me about the excessive absenteeism provision within our code and why we voted on it, what the discussion, and what the background of that was. And quite honestly, at the time when it was brought up to me, I said, I know that there's a provision regarding council members being excessively absent and dock and pay and those sorts of things, but I wasn't aware of, there's bylaws in each of the commissions and everything, but not for the commissions as a whole. And so then I went and did a little research. And so I want to kind of talk about process, the substance of the ordinance, and then kind of the enforcement of it. So the process was, if you guys recall back in, I think, March of last year, we had an informational where we talked about Chapter 2 and Chapter 1, just going through and doing an administrative update. You know, we had issues in there where department heads' titles had changed. There were some things in there that talked about old code that had subsequently been superseded, and so we could take those things out. And so we had a discussion about it, and then staff had asked us to send in some questions if we had anything. And after that, I think Alderman Schmidt and myself had sent in a number of questions, and a memo was produced responding to those questions and outlining those changes that the staff had seen and implemented. But there was a number of places within it that it said, this is a policy change, and so this is merely for cleanup. We are not changing any policy. Then we went forward, and then the item was on a cow. Unfortunately, I wasn't there that night. I did watch the meeting and have subsequently rewatched it. And in that meeting, again, it was reiterated that said this is merely a cleanup of the code, and that's all we're considering. I think Alderman Schmidt had a couple of questions regarding people running for office and political affiliations. And that was basically all that was discussed that night. We went then forward. It was first reading, and then in second reading, I'm sure you guys will recall, I came based on that memo and a number of things, came with a list of about 20 amendments to that section, of which I think we adopted somewhere between 12 and 15 of them, not all, but more than half or so. Again, as it was prefaced that night, we're not talking about policy changes, but this is the cleanup there. And shame on me, I blame myself as much as anything else, that I, based off of what the memo had said and what we had been presented before, what the changes would be. I did not go back through with a fine-tooth comb to see if anything else had been placed into the changes. This was put into it. And I'll read to you what it says. It says, excessive absenteeism. Excessive absenteeism shall mean an absence from more than 4 meetings on a board or commission during a municipal year. Any appointed member who is absent for more than 4 meetings during a municipal year shall be considered to have resigned from said board or commission, and a vacancy shall exist to be filled according to city ordinance, unless superseded by a board or commission bylaws. So when I was reading through that, I was like, oh, clearly I did not see that, because I would have had a myriad of questions regarding that. So that's where I guess I'd like us to talk kind of about the substance of this. This has a overarching determination that if you miss more than 4 meetings, whether you're on a commission that meets 11 times a year, or you're a commission that meets 21 times a year, that if you miss more than 4, you are resigned. It's not, there's the possibility that you might be removed. There's not a process for warnings or that the council should vote to have you removed, or any kind of process. It is, you are resigned. So from there forward, you cannot participate.
Is that in a row?
No.
Just 4 total?
Well, more than 4 within the calendar year.
Okay.
Now, it does have, to your point, that it does say unless superseded by a board or commission bylaws. And within, if you then go in and read like There's, with the library, I think with the library and maybe the park board, if you miss 3 consecutive or 4 in a year, then there's certain processes, and some of it's, some commissions say, well, then you get reported to the mayor, but then doesn't say anything what happens after that. And so there's, and some of them is that the commission itself has to vote to remove you, and then that's suggested on and those sorts of things. And so my concern is a couple of things. One is, from the calls that I've gotten, is the enforcement of this. We passed this in July of last year. I think it was July 13th was in that memo I had sent. But it's my understanding that there have been people, that this has been applied retroactively to them for all of 2022. So if they missed meetings before this was enacted, then that counted against them for that municipal year. And the ones that I had talked with, they had not been told that this new rule was in effect. I've also been told that there are, while it doesn't say anything, like with ours, there is a provision in it that says that you can call in if you meet these criteria, if you're sick, if it's a work-related thing or whatever. I've been told that there are people who have missed more than the 4 on a commission, but have been told they're fine because they were away, they had excused absences because of work or something like that. Even if you're away for work with the council, you still have to call in, and otherwise it's counted as an absent against you and everything. And so I've got some concern because there have been people with, in some cases, decades of experience on some of our boards that have been removed, basically kicked off these boards because this was enacted retroactively against them, or that's what they've communicated to me. I had one gentleman come up to me in January. Now looking back at it, I think this is what happened. I ran into him at a basketball game, and he said, well, I asked him, I said, hey, how are things going with that commission? He's like, well, I got resigned. I'm like, what do you mean you got resigned? He said, well, I got a call that said, you're no longer on this commission. Thanks for your resignation. You're no longer on it. And he's like, I didn't resign. He said, well, yeah, you didn't meet the criteria, so you are no longer. And he didn't fight it, but he had mentioned something to me about it. And so my concern is that the way that this ordinance is written, that we have people, like for instance, on our plan commission that have voted on things, but had missed last year more than 4 meetings, subsequently voted on things, but then was told, hey, no, those are valid excuses, so you're okay. But if I was somebody who the Plan Commission found against or found in favor of something that I didn't agree with, I might say, hey, that's not a legitimate vote because that person is resigned. That's not a process through anything that went. They are resigned the second they missed that 5th meeting. And so I just have some concerns about the process of how this wound up coming up. Again, never mentioned, never discussed, never brought up that this was something that was changed and brought into it. How it is drafted, I think, is extremely poor. How it is then dovetailed in with being superseded by bylaws and or superseded by board or commission bylaws, because if they've got some kind of provision that just says, hey, if you missed 4 days and now they have to vote, what happens if then they meet a 5th? Well, that's different. It doesn't talk about missing 5 meetings. I guess I've got concerns on exactly how this was done and how it's being implemented, and seems to be selectively enforced. And so I wanted to hear what anybody else had to say about it.
Mr. O'Brien.
I would say that if we can make it uniform for all appointed positions and keep somebody's gonna need to keep track of, because one committee might be totally different than the other one. If your buddy's on the committee and he's missed 4 or 5, you're not gonna, you're not gonna rat him out. So it needs to be somebody, I don't know if we give that to the clerk to do, I don't know if the clerk wants any additional duties.
Well, I can tell you the clerk was part of procuring all of the attendance records
Okay,
for
well.
2022. I mean,
As
that's
long
the
as it's
normal
uniform,
process.
straight across the board, same for everybody. you know.
Well, you can speak to different bylaws and how they impact that, but is there anyone else with a hand? Mr. Waldron?
I understand what Alderman Wint is talking about, but I kind of like leaving it in the hands of the boards and commissions. I think those are the folks that are on the ground, sitting there, volunteering their time. And yes, there may be different rules for the park board versus the library versus Main Street, but they are controlling it. Now, should there be something more than just notifying the mayor that James has missed 5 meetings? And I think the board should take it upon themselves to vote themselves and remove people or not. But for me, I kind of like the boards and commissions having that discretion. That's my only comment.
Mr. Schmidt?
So I've had the opportunity to participate with 2 boards reviewing their own bylaws, so both the library board, where I sit as liaison, and then the Moline Center that I sit on. And in both places where it has come up, I mean, the commissions have been supportive of that ordinance. They've looked to say, we might want to alter and do ours a little differently. They each had something in place, but they said they don't exactly, they wanted to make changes and look at it. I just think that without this provision, which, when I remember reading this coming into the ordinance, and as we came to it on first reading, and I remember thinking, we need this. Because otherwise what we run into is we can't make quorum at meetings, people aren't showing up to meetings. I was just starting to see repeat non-attendees as I started to engage with those commissions. And so to me, it was a wise solution that helps us move us down that track. And I think that, by passing that opportunity to the boards or commissions, I think they can, when and if they have problems, they can address that within their own bylaws. And if they don't, then it defaults to something. And if we just said hey, go set it up, it would take years to get everyone to comply. This puts a backstop in, so this is the rule until and unless you set up something different for yourselves.
Mr. Went?
Yeah, I don't have any problem. I mean, there should be attendance if you're really not taking this seriously and moving through. But I do think, to Alderman Waldron's point, that a commission that meets 11 times a year and you're able to miss 4 meetings and no problems at all, versus a commission that meets 20, 22, 21, 22 times a year, and if you miss 5, you're out, I think is not appropriate. I mean, that is...
Well, let me address that, because if you follow my page, you'll see that I have meetings with representatives from commissions and boards fairly frequently, and as promised, when we made the ADU vote, I've sat down with the chair of the Plan Commission, and back in January, asked them to look very specifically at bringing more clarity to their bylaws so that there was no question, right? This was one of those bylaws that they didn't have enough clarity on their own. That did not occur, so we had further conversation, and we already have a proposed solution for that, because the recognition was back when I gathered all of the information and applied the ordinance, which I told you all I was doing on January 10th. You can see it in the minutes. I have very frequently told her, this commission meets twice as much as everyone else. You should have appropriate attendance policies to yours, just as the park board does and the library board does. But that doesn't mean every single board and commission has their own that they've crafted, but they certainly can be encouraged to do so. So that conversation has already happened. Mr. Went.
And I hope that they figure that out, because I think we've lost some people who have been on that commission for some time and for decades, and we're forced off. The retroactive, and I guess maybe this question for Margaret, because I'm assuming she made the call on it, is passing something in July and then retroactively enforcing it to the beginning of the year, while I guess maybe legally it doesn't say that it's starting today and only moving forward or whatever. How does that work as far as, you know, everything else we do is pretty much grandfathered in if you're in those situations? What was the idea and the process of saying, hey, you guys, we're not even going to tell you that there's this new rule, but that because every person that I've talked with that was affected by this told me they had no idea that this was a new rule for them. And like I said, being counting back and retroactively, that just doesn't seem fair or right to me. But what was the process behind that?
Well, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
please, Ms. Casapos.
Thank you. I am happy to speak on a number of the issues raised. And I provided all of you with a memo which explained our process to your question about process, as well as other issues that were raised in your memo, Alderman, including your allegation that we slipped it in.
I think it was
You
the
don't
only
have the
thing that was
floor.
put
You
in
don't
that
have
was
the
not
floor.
mentioned in your memo.
Mr. Went, you don't have the floor. Please let her continue.
Just clarifying for the public.
So first of all, it was a very long chapter requiring a number of changes and updates. And I still commend our staff for working diligently on this for a number of months. As I said in my memo, we never prepared a memo for you on each change as we made them. Our only memo was in response to Alderman Went and Alderman Schmidt's questions. That was the only memo that we ever actually prepared about the changes and suggestions. And I remind you, we only presented a draft with suggestions. It is unfortunate that maybe some of you missed that inclusion. We thought it was housekeeping, as I stated in my memo, to bring purity for excessive absences for council to board members, board and commission members. We never meant to force it down your throat. It was highlighted like every other amendment. Alderman Went, as he said on July 12th last year, made 20 motions to amend. We certainly assumed that he, of everyone, had read through the entire document. You always have the legislative power to amend it. So certainly a lot of this remains in your hands. As to the number, we did suggest in our revisions that it would be at 4 absences, and frankly, I'm not sure when we wrote that that we were thinking that some commissions, specifically the Plan Commission meets many more times than once a month. So certainly that does seem to be something that should be revised and perfected. As the mayor said, there have been a number of conversations already which acknowledge that and will certainly move forward. As to the retroactive part, you as a legislative body have that right to make it effective and retroactive or going forward. It was not adopted that way. It was adopted to be effective on the date and not just going forward, but in place on the day that you voted a final vote on July 12th. As to, as to the phrase that you have highlighted where there is mention superseded by a board or commission bylaw. You know, I'm an attorney, I know you are too, Alderman, so you probably better than other members of this council know that any commission or board cannot adopt a rule that supersedes an ordinance. Just like an appellate court cannot supersede a decision of the Supreme Court. It's, you know, the law of dignity. I'm sure that you're aware of that, Alderman Went. So that the ordinance is always going to supersede a bylaw. Like the Supreme Court will always supersede the appellate court or the trial court. Now, to the extent that they may work together.
But I just want a clarification point of information. It says, unless superseded by board or commission bylaw. So this says it can supersede.
Well,
And that's why I think the drafting is suspect, but help me understand, because you just said it cannot be superseded, but the ordinance specifically said it is superseded by.
So I also would point out that the Plan Commission bylaw, which I believe you are referring to.
Oh, there's a few of them that I've referred to, but yeah.
Well, all right. So let's just take the Plan Commission bylaw. It says, any member whose regular employment or other personal activities unduly interferes with attendance or active contribution to the functions of the Plan Commission should resign from the Plan Commission. It is merely a suggestion, so it does not conflict with the ordinance. It says should resign from the Plan Commission. So it is not mandatory in the bylaw. So
Mr.
the
Waldron had his hand up.
ordinance would supersede this.
Mr. Waldron.
Margaret, what was the previous ordinance that got changed? What was the prior number, if there was one?
There was none.
It was a
So-
policy change.
Right,
Thank you.
so there
Thank you.
was nothing. And so we meant to try to match in some way the excessive absenteeism provision in the ordinance as applied to council members. So we meant to just bring that forward, close the loop for board and commission members. That was our goal.
And
Now,
I will clarify as well, so that you don't have the wrong impression. There have only been 2 folks from the Plan Commission, 2 folks from the Library Board, and 2 folks from CACA that had excessive absences. And we're talking, in some cases, up to 9. So this is not some sort of, issue widespread with our volunteers, which we're very thankful for. Ms. Casapos.
and it is also my understanding that, at least, that all have actually resigned. Nobody was removed, nobody was, now, they may, in hearsay, the story may be different, but each person who left due to excessive absences is my understanding now, again, hearsay, but that they actually resigned and understood that the ordinance would put them in that position and left. So the bottom line here, at least my message to all of you, is that we certainly didn't slip it in. It was highlighted, you had it for 6 weeks. It's unfortunate if some of you didn't understand that it was there or missed it. But the cure is simple.
So I see your hand, I'll call on you shortly. For further clarification, none of the 6 folks that I mentioned to you were just arbitrarily emailed telling them they were over. There was always a step with gathering information about the reasons for the absences, et cetera. So any characterization otherwise is completely incorrect. And of course, we have the communications to show that and confirmed dates of resignation, et cetera. So I just want you to have the full information. Yes, Mr. Wan.
And I think that's great that you collected the information. The problem is the ordinance says that information doesn't mean jack. If you missed it, you're out and you're resigned, and that's it. And so again, how this is drafted, and I guess to Margaret's comment that said the way this was passed, it was enforced starting on July 13th. But it's my understanding that it was retroactively enforced. So I think that becomes a little bit of a nuance. Now, the other issue of those people resigning, from the conversations I had, it was basically, you have to resign or you're going to get kicked off of this thing. And so, again, that was what was communicated to me. So saying that they resigned is like the person who resigns who said, if not, you're going to get fired tomorrow, resign. But to Alderman Waldron's point, it was not in it. This was a new policy that was stuck into here. And I went through with a fine-tooth comb afterwards, and there was nothing else in this thing that wasn't either in the memo or were just clean-up things in the 109 pages. You're right. This one on page, 56 of it, I missed. Because usually I read every line, and somehow I missed it. I must have drifted off at line 56. But the concern is, like you had said here, this says any member whose regular employment or other personal activities unduly, they should resign. But it's my understanding that we are giving, which isn't in the ordinance, excused absences. Is that true?
No, that was an improper use of terminology. The point is,
well, do we have people who are sitting on the commission that missed more than 4 meetings that are still serving on the commission?
Correct. There's one person, and there's a decision-making tree related to that.
Where is that in the ordinance?
It's not in the ordinance because it's the mayor's in charge of enforcing the ordinance, period. So, as with, anyway.
I have a real question about the mayor's power about selectively enforcing it, because it does not say anything about excused absences. It doesn't say anything about unless the mayor thinks that you should be on and the other people should be off.
That's not how it's applied. It's called, we have an obligation to make sure, and I've said this to every committee, we have an obligation to make sure that online participation for those who are bound by their work commitments but can call in is accessible, and it has been not consistently accessible. I will not destabilize a commission and penalize folks when the city hasn't done its job to make that an opportunity.
And I don't disagree, but that's not what this ordinance says, and it should be fixed.
Mr. Wendt, then you all on the council can fix it. That's your prerogative. But we hear time and time again about the desire to enforce our ordinances.
Yeah.
So it's very suspect that when they are enforced, people are unhappy about it.
No, I'm asking you to enforce it. You're saying you're not enforcing it.
Did you have your hand up? I can't recall.
So all I was going to say, thank you, is that the one, I actually have firsthand knowledge of the one commission member who was not, did not lose his seat due to more than 4 absences. And that was a situation where he actually met the requirements for remote attendance, but there was an equipment failure. So
I've reviewed the attendance, and that's not true. They were over 5 without.
I've done it. I've done the request for informations and have a report from relating to all of those. But in any case, we're digressing because what is the ultimate outcome that is requested from this conversation this evening? Is the council aware of what a desired outcome is? Mr. Wendt?
I think that we should direct staff to come back to clean this up, because I think that this is poorly written. The idea that there are call-in provisions, there are, and it says, for council members, you can call in and do these things. If that's what our intent is, and I think we absolutely should do it, that should be within the ordinance as well. I think that the problem was that we hastily put this through. It was the only policy change that was put in through there. We didn't discuss it. It wasn't brought up that this was being changed. And what we resulted with was an ordinance that results in enforcement that seems to be somewhat suspect on some people and others, reading into it that some things are excused and some things aren't, and that, and somewhere it's the mayor's prerogative through the process. And so I think that staff should come back and with suggestions on how to clean this up based on this conversation.
Mr. Timmy, and then Ms. Kostopoulos and Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't think that this was snuck in. I view this as house cleaning. There was a gaping hole, which is there were commissions that were empty or defunct. And the fact is there needs to be a mechanism to prevent that. In software engineering, we have a default case that is the catch-all for all of the logic in case we forget something. This is the same thing. We set a basic level. I would argue that if council is the barometer by which we measure this, and we're allowed to miss 5 before we're fined, proportionately, then these commissions should only really be allowed to miss 2. And so I think that 4 is extremely generous for these once a month or even twice a month commissions. And so I don't think this is snuck in. I think it is part of the cleanup, which is why when I read it, I didn't flip out about a big change there. I thought it was overdue.
Thank you. Ms. Kostopoulos.
So I just want to clarify that, again, sorry, that chapter 2 already has language that allows remote attendance for board and commission members. So I'm not sure, Alderman Nguyen, if you were thinking by your statements that that is not already in there.
Isn't it also part of OMA that applies to our boards and
Correct.
commissions? Exactly, we're just basically doing what OMA says we need to do to provide for attendance. Mr. O'Brien?
And maybe Margaret could answer this, maybe we do need some more lawyers around here. You don't hear that very often.
Yeah, really.
But it's the mayor's prerogative anyway to see who sits on these boards, I mean, who comes and goes on these boards, because people come and go. And it's the mayor that makes the appointment, correct?
Correct.
But she can't remove them.
She cannot remove them?
No.
That goes to the council. I didn't remove anyone. The ordinance says you are considered to
Okay,
have.
well, I guess I didn't
You
realize
resigned.
that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Macias, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Your Honor. In my opinion, this really is just the least standard. Again, 4 is very generous, and I would hope it incentivizes whoever leads these commissions to really put in place something that fits the number of times they meet and whatnot. So yeah, but there has to be a hard stop. The mayor's the enforcer of that. I don't see anything wrong with this, in my opinion.
Mr. Schmidt?
I had a question and a point. And first, my question, because I don't think this was answered in a way that helps with enough clarity too, because in the excessive absenteeism, we have the language, unless superseded by a board or commission bylaw. And I recognize and agree that the plan commission bylaw doesn't say anything that would supersede. I agree with that interpretation. My question though becomes, in the case where a board, like the library board that I'm familiar with, does have a different one, it is my understanding that the one in the bylaws does supersede the ordinance. Is that because we specifically stated, and that is extraordinarily unusual in the code of ordinances, but as I read this, this would say that the board sets their own policy, and I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
So this is a tricky question, and I would suggest if you are interested in amending this provision, that we address that at the same time. Certainly, there can be additional rules which would supersede maybe the number. We would have to really think about what can be superseded and what cannot. Because basic law says that you cannot get around an ordinance by enacting a bylaw or a policy.
In the case of.
Even when it says that
This is
it's given
exactly
permission, I mean, it's granting that permission. I understand that that's
how it's
the
written.
only way.
So
Because that's how I read it.
Yeah.
That's what it
So,
says.
Maybe we need to work on this some more.
And just to be clear, in the case of the library folks, they also had excessive absences according to their own bylaws.
Right.
Just, that was double checked and triple checked, and everything was run by council.
And my only other point was in the cases of people who resigned from commissions that I'm familiar with, who I spoke with, also both represent, that they were, when they were discussed, it was like, are you gonna be here going forward? And then, no, I'm gonna keep missing just as many meetings. And I think that is, to me, that had been part of the conversation. I said, yeah, that's what I said. I said, I missed that many and I'm gonna keep missing that many. And that makes sense for them to be removed, absolutely. So, I just thought that in those conversations I've had, while some people were not happy that they could not continue to serve, there was also an understanding of how that came to be.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing further,
Well, I'd like to move to direct staff to clean this up.
is that acceptable in an informational?
So are our rule has been no motions and
Is it legal?
informationals. Well, I think that you could take a consensus, whether council believes that there should be further amendments to this section. I believe that it is not on the agenda for action.
Yeah. Oh, so can I get a sense from the council of who would be interested in doing what Margaret said, making some changes?
Given Margaret's statement that
It
she's
doesn't-
unclear on what it means, I don't think we have a choice but to send it to
Right,
short.
right, I mean,
All right.
you know,
There
you.
is
The legal
consensus to
Yeah.
fix this provision.
Sure.
For sure. Thank you. We'll continue with that at a later date. I'll now call the regular council meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have an invocation?
Okay. As we gather here today, please let us do this with full transparency for our community. And the words of Dean Mathias, let's find a win-win-win for everyone. Thanks.
Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please. Alderperson Williams.
Present.
Macias.
Present.
Wynn.
Present.
Timian.
Present.
Moyer.
Present.
O'Brien.
Present.
Waldron.
Present.
Schmidt.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of council special meeting minutes of March 2nd, 2023, Committee of the Whole, council and executive session minutes of March 7th, 2023, council minutes of March 14th, 2023, and appointments made during Committee of the Whole on March 21st, 2023. Second reading ordinances. Council Bill number 3009-2023, an ordinance amending Chapter 24, Personnel of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 24-3207, Appendix 1, by adding a job description for accounting manager. Council Bill number 3010-2023, an ordinance amending Chapter 24, Personnel of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 24-3207, Appendix 1, by adding a job description for management analyst/grant coordinator. Council Bill number 3011-2023, an ordinance amending Chapter 35, Zoning and Land Development of the Moline Code of Ordinances by enacting an amendment to the zoning map incorporated therein as Section 35-3103, 918, and 922 4th Avenue.
Move to approve consent agenda.
We're not quite through. We have consent agenda resolutions to do. Resolutions. Council Bill number 1049-2023, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an intergovernmental agreement with Moline Coal Valley School District number 40, establishing an administrative internship program. Council Bill number 1050-2023, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Davenport Electric Contract Company for project number 1428, traffic signal replacement at 19th Avenue and 7th Street for an amount of $261,000, $178.18. Council Bill number 1051-2023, a resolution authorizing the fleet and facilities manager to purchase a utility tractor from Deere and Company in Cary, North Carolina for the amount of $56,894.17, utilizing Sourcewell contract number 031121-DAC. Council Bill number 1052-2023, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a professional services agreement with Western Illinois University for technical services related to the development of a nutrient assessment reduction plan, which is a requirement of the South Slope Wastewater Treatment Plant National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, permit in the amount of $30,289. Council Bill number 1055-2023, a resolution approving an amendment to the rules and regulations adopted by the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners, hereinafter Commission, concerning Chapter 6, examinations for original appointment, fire, sections 1, 5A, B, and 8C, and amending ordinance number 3050-2022, the budget for fiscal year 2023 for the fire department by including additional training costs associated with the amendments to the rules and regulations of the commission.
Council Bill number 1056-2023, a resolution authorizing the Fire Deputy Chief of Emergency Medical Services, EMS, to execute a ProCare proposal/contract between City of Moline Fire Department and Stryker related to the on-site preventative maintenance of current EMS equipment and amending ordinance number 3050-2022, the budget for the fiscal year 2023 for the fire department by including additional costs associated with the ProCare 6-year agreement.
Your Honor, I move for the approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Alderperson O'Brien, seconded by Alderperson Went. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion carries. Non-consent agenda, second reading ordinances. 15.4. So 3012 was moved, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, no, okay. All right. Council Bill number 3012-2023, an ordinance amending Chapter 35, zoning and land development of the Moline Code of Ordinances regarding electric vehicle supply equipment, including amendments to Article 1, Division 2, Section 35-1203, definitions, Article 3, Division 4, Section 35-3401, regulation of allowed uses, Table 35-3401.1, permitted land uses, Section 35-3408, principal land, commercial land uses, Section 35-3411, accessory residential land uses, Section 35-3414, accessory commercial uses, and Article 5, Division 1, Section 35-5100, off-street parking and traffic circulation standards.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Waldron, seconded by Alderperson Timian. Discussion. Looks like you're ready to go. Mr. Veatlook.
Yes, there's been a lot of conversations about this tonight. So before you is the ordinance as proposed. There have been a couple of questions. I will address Ms. Elias's concerns a little bit here. And I've shared these links with her. One of the big questions is, what will this all cost? There's not a ton of research out there. There's not been a ton of communities that have done this, but what I have found is a couple of locations. The California Air Resources Board, California is always on the cutting edge of all of this. They have studied it, found that the average cost of installing EV infrastructure for new construction is around $1,650 per charging space. If you wait to retrofit an existing building, it can range anywhere from about $3,800 to just under $7,000 per space. City of Orlando also studied this in looking at their EV ordinance. They found of it being about $900 for new construction versus about $3,450 for a retrofit. So, and then finally, Tompkins County, New York, which is where Cornell is, Ithaca, New York. They also studied this, and they found around $1,000 to $1,500 per space if you're retrofitting it. So there is some information out there. We certainly do understand that, especially with this project, we want to be good partners with them, and we want to make sure that we're not adding undue or unexpected costs. We still are in the development agreement drafting phase and all that with them, so I think it's something that we can certainly bring up. Furthermore, I did receive a couple of questions from Alderperson Went prior to the meeting. If you would allow me, I'll address some of those concerns. First of all, he had a question about Section 35-3408, letter I, subsection 6. There is an extra "is" in there that should be stricken. That was an error. That's a Scrivener's error and should be struck from the section. He also had a couple questions about if someone could run a business out of their home, renting out their charging space or whatever to a resident. While that's certainly possible, it's probably not very likely. On a single-family residential, you're either going to have a level 1 or a level 2 charger at the most. A level 1 charger, you're only getting between 2 to 4 miles an hour of charging capacity. If you do run a level 2, most home ones, you're really only getting about 25 miles to the hour. So again, even if somebody was renting that out, let's say all day, every day, you're only gonna get maybe 2 or 3 at the most, that would be doing that. So it's not something that I believe staff is super concerned about. If it becomes an issue, we certainly can make an amendment to that. Finally, there was a question about how does this all fit in with our non-conforming standards. There was a memo that was drafted by Dan Bolin, our legal counsel, that stated, that remodeling would not trigger this ordinance unless the owner expanded parking. In that case, if they needed to add additional parking, if it was, they would have to bring at least that new parking, 20% of it to be EV ready. So again, when we speak out EV ready, we're talking about running dry conduit. So no wires, no anything like that. It would be dry conduit that would support a future branch circuit. The final question that Alderperson Went did have was, where would that conduit originate? Where would it end? The ordinance does not speak about that. That's something we could, add a little bit of some additional language to. But the National Electric Code for 2023, the city's on 2011 right now, but for 2023, it does require a dedicated branch circuit for an EV charger over 120 volts, so level 2 or above. And then the final thing is that level 2 is all you're really going to get a maximum in a residential area. Your level 3 are your much larger ones, your Tesla Superstations, your Electrify America stations. Those run anywhere from the mid 5 to low 6 figures typically. So not something someone's going to install at their home. And more than likely, even an apartment is only going to, at the most, would probably install like a level 2 charger. You're really only going to see level 3 at like a public charging station or something along that. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that the group may have, though.
Thank you. Mr. Went.
Yeah, the origination, I mean, we kind of talked about it before, that if somebody's coming in, because all we're talking about is putting in conduit, because it just has to be EV ready. So that was one of the concerns of like, okay, I've got to put in these charging stations everywhere, but no, you're just basically putting in and I'm not sure, it's a 2-inch
typically
a conduit through. And the question became, okay, well, if I'm having a contractor who's coming and redoing a parking lot for me, and for $60, I can just basically stick some conduit underneath this thing and just put it from landscape island to landscape island or something like that, and say, hey, I've got conduit underneath here. Are we just making people jump through hoops just to jump through hoops? Or are we actually doing it because you said, well, we'll review the plans, but if there's nothing in the code that says, be like, well, no, you have to approve these, I meet what your code says. And so I think that maybe some of the stuff maybe needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I do appreciate Alex's concerns where, as you said, there are some things out there, but we're really not sure 100% exactly what this will look like, because it certainly will be much more expensive if you have to, if you've got a sixplex in town and you're redoing the parking lot, and now you've got to bore in, you've got to get the conduit into the electrical room, and so that it could be eventually wire pulled from the source versus just stubbed up in the landscaping just outside the building or something like that. And so that becomes a much more expensive approach, but seems to be what you're trying to get at, than just leaving it kind of open-ended.
Thank you. Anything further from the council? Questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Wynn.
So I'll move that we table this until our next council meeting to address that, and maybe get some more information on the costs of, once we get the origination and that stuff worked out with the electrical code.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Alderperson Williams. Did you catch that? Okay, tabling until April 11th for more information on the cost and the placement of conduit. Hearing no further discussion, roll call please.
Alderperson Went.
Aye.
Tamian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Nay.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
7 ayes, 1 nay. That motion
Passes. Thank you very much. We're to 18.1. By the way, you're doing great. With Russell on her first solo night, her first solo flight.
Very pleasant.
Thank you.
Somebody moved that chair. That's the second person
Killing
who
everyone.
took tonight.
Put in the center.
Is it the third?
It's always weird.
Okay. He's
Is he
just
leaving?
left, I think, for water.
Oh.
He's back.
Little dry mouth.
Council Bill number 3007-2023, an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 10 thereof, parking prohibited at any time, by amending the following locations: removing 12th Avenue on both sides between 19th Street and 31st Street, removing 12th Avenue on both sides from 33rd Street to a distance of 100 feet east of 34th Street, removing 12th Avenue on both sides from 36th Street Court to the East Moline border, and adding 12th Avenue on both sides between 19th Street and the East Moline border.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Alderperson Timian, seconded by Alderperson Moyer. Discussion, Mr. Schmidt.
Your Honor, I make a motion to, in the ordinance language, strike section 1 and replace it with this language. That Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 10 thereof, parking prohibited at any time, is hereby amended by adding 12th Avenue on the north side between 31st Street and 33rd Street, and adding 12th Avenue on the north side from 100 feet east of 34th Street to 36th Street Court.
She will need that
Yes.
in writing.
No.
Can you, this is a motion to amend. We need a second. Second by Alderperson Macias. Mr. Schmidt, please.
So the language that I just spoke is the language to match with the map that we were sent by David Dreyer yesterday afternoon. And that is language that he had put together as it would be presented to council. So this is replacing that previous plan with the new plan. This is, I think, an area where we must find the right compromise to move forward. And is something that I have been looking at and working on these last couple of weeks, because there are multiple pieces coming together. One of those pieces is obviously the residents' concerns about parking. And that has been heard very loud and clear by me. I think we've all heard that. And I think it is something that we need to remedy. This plan reduces it so there's only parking on one side of that street. And that is a change, but I think that is a necessary change to get to the other part of this, of what we're trying to accomplish, and I think is an attempt to compromise to find that right position. What this road really needs is that road diet, and the road diet not focusing on the bike lane component, though that does come along with that, but it's really focusing on that left turn lane. The last night we voted on this, on my drive home, I had somebody make a left turn on 12th Avenue in that lane with no signal, and I didn't almost rear end them, but it was very easy to see that's what would have happened. And getting that left center turn lane is going to be one of the biggest things we can do. I also think that as we look at the current bike lane facilities, and it's the shared lane between the bikes and the parking, and it's not a hard line. As we look at this plan, it shows a very hard line of that bike lane going around the parking and getting in there, and that sets a stronger example. And could people still speed through that? It's possible. We can't control every single person, but to go from a place where it is unclear and not well marked to you have to cross two double lines to go through that, I think would give a lot more people pause. This street has a lot of speed, and I think we have to do something to move in that road diet direction. And this does, but I think we also need to recognize the need to keep the parking there, because this is a unique part of town. No alleys, no other place to go. So, thank you.
I think, whose hand was up first? Mr. Timian?
Timian's was.
And then
Thank
Mr.
you.
O'Brien.
I have a few, I agree, we need the center turn lane. Unfortunately, this amendment doesn't have a center turn lane where we need it the most, which is in front of the residents. And we're not solving the problem. Just point of context, and Mr. Dreyer, I asked you to please get your feet ready, because I have a few questions for you. A few quotes here. Moline Police Sergeant Steve Etheridge said traffic statistics show that parked cars contribute to accidents and confuse motorists. November 23rd, 1988. Moline Police argued against parking on 12th Avenue, saying it creates a traffic hazard on the hilly road, Rock Island, Argus, July 14th, 1988. Removing parking along 12th Avenue from 19th Street East in Moline will reduce the number of accidents by over 20% and injuries by 40%. According to a city engineering study, Daily Dispatch, April 26, 1988. We've been having this conversation for 35 years. The answer has always been remove parking. A compromise that adds parking is not a compromise. It is adding parking, which has always been the problem. Residents tonight said, we're not doing anything to stop the speeding. Road diets, slow down speeding. Residents tonight say, I constantly see accidents when cars are merging. Road diets will remove the merging. This amendment does not fix the core problem, which is the parking. It also makes it dangerous for people who park on the south side of the road, because now they have to jaywalk to get to the north side. It creates an unsafe bike lane right next to a parking lane, which makes these cyclists eligible to be doored if the actual parking is being used. So I would like to ask Mr. Dreyer a few questions about the center turn lanes. And with this amendment, we heard from Mr. Abad earlier the benefits of them, but just how many spaces does this amendment provide?
So what we did was we,
Do we have the
yeah,
slides,
if David,
please,
if you wanna put it up, where we have no parking today, we're still able to maintain the center left turn lane with bike facilities. And how do I use
So
this?
that's 27th to.
Yeah, so we're starting west and we're going towards the east.
Okay.
Just click this.
Yep.
So we just go to the east, and then at 31st Street, we start moving the bikes and the traffic to the left so that we can develop a parking space on the south side. So on this west half of our approximately 1 mile project, we have about 1,000 feet of unmarked parking spaces on this segment. As you go further east, you come to the intersection, and then you start going up the hill from 34th to 41st Street. Again, we move traffic away from the south curb there, and so that we can develop a parking lane for the properties along the south side. The properties on the north have a bike lane along the curb frontage, and that, so they don't have the benefit of parking. We gain on that south side, I believe it's 19 spaces. There are 41 spaces on that segment of the project on both sides. Then as we get to 36th Street Court, again, the no parking picks up that's already there today. We go back to the center left turn lane with bikes, which is a good treatment through this curve, because there's a number of crashes through here with side swipes and some head-ons because of people not negotiating the curves as well as we like. So that's essentially the project in a nutshell. It doesn't operate as well, in my opinion, as option number one, but option number one the goal wasn't to provide parking, it was to provide a safety improvement project and meet the bike plan goal of having bike facilities on there. So if that project were a 10, this project would be a 6, in that it meets some of the goals, not all of the goals that we were looking to implement with the project. It's not a perfect solution, but it's doable. So with this option, you gain 19 spaces on the east side, on the south side of the road, and on the west side, you gain 1,000 feet of unmarked parking that's currently there today. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so 19 spaces, and how many residents are losing the benefit of a two-way turn lane, which we acknowledge, according to your expertise, is actually a way to increase safety?
Absolutely, center left turn lane does do that. The studies in the cities and communities that have been doing it for 30 years have shown that. If you look at all the parcels that are somewhat landlocked or have loop streets along the corridor that no longer have access to the center left turn lane, I think I counted 72 addresses.
Okay, so 72 homes lose the thing that we're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
To give 19 spaces.
Yes, the people that live more off of the corridor.
Wasn't it 19 plus another 1,000 feet?
19 spaces plus 1,000 feet.
I'll
Yeah.
call on you, thank you. And you have one
Well,
more,
and then-
one more.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to point out that this has never been about bike lanes. It wasn't about bike lanes in 1988 when it started. It's not about bike lanes now. It's a really good argument, but it's not about bike lanes. The opposition to this is about, and we've heard this from the residents, and I sympathize with this, but it is about the option for occasional parking. And if we flip this argument backwards, what we're saying is their need for occasional parking is more important than the safety of all people traveling on 12th Avenue. Those are the trade-offs. We have an unsafe situation due to parking with 35 years of studies and expert opinions that keep saying the same thing, or occasional parking for holidays and birthdays.
Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Brien, your first comment?
Well, this might surprise you, but I agree with a lot of what you just said.
Not surprised.
Not surprised, that's good. But I have a petition here from the people that live in the neighborhood that have come down here tonight that don't want it. And I'm guessing it was not easy for you to come down here. Nobody likes to come to City Hall. It's usually not for a good reason. The parking lot's full, you're usually not there to tell you you're doing a great job. We all get that. But I guess my question was, and I'll probably vote for this amendment, but this traffic calming is gonna go from, that doesn't sound very calming. It's gonna go from the Stardust Hotel, it's gonna continue on 12th Avenue to the west eventually, right? I mean, do we have?
It would, to the west? I don't know.
That's the hope, yeah.
So then who are gonna pick and choose whose parking gets to stay and who goes? I'm gonna vote for your amendment, but I still think it's.
Well, there's no parking down
There is no parking.
There's parking there.
There's
right?
27th down to 19th, there isn't.
Well, no, I'm talking about west.
Oh, yeah, but that, I don't think that's in the.
No, but it will be.
It will be, I think. I mean, if you're doing traffic calming on 12th Avenue, I assume that you wanna do it all the way
Thank you
through.
for pointing that out. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. I saw Mr. Went and then Mr. Schmidt.
I guess I'll address a few things here. First, I guess I'll start off with this road diet and everything. I've been talking about this for probably 7 years. I think I may have been the first person that said road diet. I think that they are a good idea. They do reduce traffic or traffic accidents. They do slow down traffic. But part of that and why we did the road diet, what we called a road diet on 7th, which was already one lane in each direction and a turn lane in the center, and narrowed those lanes and the turn lane to put bike facilities on each side, because narrower lanes reduce speeds. Unequivocally, narrower lanes reduce speeds. When you've got lanes that are almost as wide as interstate lanes, people feel more comfortable, they drive with their knees, they text while they're driving. If you're driving on a 9.5 or 10-foot lane, you pay much more attention to what you're doing and what you're going through. So I want to preference that. The reference back to 30 years ago, the experts and everything, they were also the ones that were arguing and built all these 4 lanes going in both directions, which you would, if we could go back in time, you'd say, you are a terrible expert. We should never do that. We should do 3 lanes and turn. So I'm very hesitant to be quoting people from 1988, which I believe most of us here would say, you made some real mistakes in the city that we could have done much better back then. To the point, and while I have advocated for bike lanes and all of those things, to say that this is not about bike lanes, let me ask this quick question.
Okay.
We could go to a road diet with three, one lane in the one direction, one lane in the other direction, and a turn lane, and then parking rather than bike lanes, couldn't we?
Yes.
Okay, so these are multiple factors that we're trying to work into this equation, and if you're saying it's not about bike lanes, well, okay, well then let's remove bike lanes and we put parking in, but I'm not sure that that's what we all want either. I will support this amendment. However, I still believe the suggestion I made originally is a much better solution to this. It meets technically what we passed as a policy, the Jeff spec guidelines, where we could go 4.5 bike lane. Well, actually, we could do 7-foot parking on the north side. We could do 4.5-foot bike lane, 9.5-foot through lane, 9-foot turn lane, 9.5-foot through lane. That gives us our 44 feet. It provides, we talk about Dean Mathias, the win-win-win. We preserve the parking. Now, not everybody gets everything they want, but we preserve the parking. We have the bike facilities. The narrower lanes help immensely with the speed issues that we're talking about. It is a viable option that meets our policies. The engineer book of God isn't super happy with it, but it does meet and can be done at those numbers. So everyone doesn't get everything they want, but it is a solution that I think is everybody gets kind of what they want. The removal of this turn lane, I agree, it is troublesome. I'm going to agree because it's going to keep the parking, and my guess is within a year we're going to go, oh crap. Every time I go down 12th, somebody's trying to turn into their driveway or turn down the thing, and then somebody speeds up down the park lane to their right to get by them. Real quick, how wide are these lanes in this section where there's parking, bike lanes, and then no turn lane in the middle?
This option, 7-foot parking, 1-foot buffer, 6-foot bike lane, 2-foot buffer, probably a 10-foot travel lane, 11-foot travel lane, 2-foot buffer, 5-foot bike lane. And one of those didn't come from the traffic engineering book of God, because I don't know what that is.
I think that's what Hinton used to call it.
Manual.
Can you tell us, Mr. Dreyer, why you prefer that to this?
The cross-section that Alder Wen proposed is just too narrow. It's putting bikes too close to moving traffic. And you can talk about reducing speeds, but you get to a point where people just don't stay in their lanes and things. It's just not recommended to do that. And Jeff Speck is a planning department or a planner who's written a book. I wouldn't consider his book to be any design standards. What we look at are things like the National Association of City Transportation Officials, which is probably the most liberal group applying bicycle and pedestrian facilities in cities across the country from New York to Chicago and things. And those are the recommendations that I would recommend.
So I'll finish so to that point, I know that there's been some turnover, but we adopted as a council and the city with our policy that the Jeff Speck.
So essentially a novel.
But we have adopted that as one of the guiding principles for our complete streets and our designs of things.
And in that book, he even said that the cross-section you proposed not to do.
He said that was narrow, and in some situations that could be done. And in Des Moines, there are places in Des Moines where it is 9 foot,
Well,
9.5 feet, and 4.5 feet bike lanes. And so we're not going to argue through this. I'm going to support this, but once this passes, I think we should have a different conversation about the lack of turn lane.
Yes, Mr. Timmy.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Wait, no,
no.
sorry,
Oh,
you had two shots.
At this amendment, I'll come back later.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
I have some concerns about the loss of that turn lane, but I think that as we look at this, you know, Mr. Dreyer talked about the 10 points versus 6 points, but that's only thinking about it from the complete street rubric, from that how we're building it out. That is not taking into consideration, this is not just a complete street. This is a complete street, this is an access to people's homes, and this is, you know, there are other considerations. And it's not necessarily Mr. Dreyer's job to put those 100% first. We asked him, draw this out in a certain way, and then we asked him to say, hey, let's take a closer look. I think that where we see those changes taking place, it is still removing the weaving back and forth from one lane to two lanes. There is movement, a shift, but that is different from going from one lane to 2 lanes to, I'm not sure how many lanes where the parking currently exists. And I think this makes it a much clearer traffic pattern that's going to move that and slow that down. I think that as I've thought this through, I'm not interested in hearing about articles in the newspaper from before I was born to guide the policy we're going to make today. I think that is why I've pushed for this and why I want us to bring that forward.
Thank you. Mr. Waldron.
I can't support the amendment at this point. Since we're going to talk about the amendment first, I just think we've gone about that wrong. I think we should take a look at what the engineer recommended. Oh, by the way, we only have one engineer in this room. We have other people trying to engineer this project who are not engineers, whether they've read it out of a book, what they want to make a compromise. I think we should go with what that paid expert told us was the safest thing to do. That was the recommendation. Now we put feelings into it, or we want to design something. Now we have an amendment before we even got to talk about the original topic. I'm for talking about the original proposal, voting on that, then maybe seeing how it went, go with amendment. But I can't support the amendment first. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Macias.
Yes, and this was a really tough one for me because I do believe in having the road diets, the bike lanes. More and more people are riding bikes and those electric bikes too. They're becoming very, very popular. So we're sharing the road, not just with bicycles, motorcycles. There's huge efforts to get people to notice them. And so for me, it's about safety, if we can slow things down. And the thing that'll slow people down, and I've see it all the time on 19th Street, it's traffic. You got cars in front of you that are slow, you're gonna slow down. So it's proven. And I was a little iffy at first when I first saw road diets in the city. I started using them and I realized they're actually not that bad. That's actually a pretty good thing. So, this, while it's not perfect, it is a compromise. Not everybody gets exactly what they want, but I also feel for the residents that live there because, yeah, you know, you mentioned your mother being handicapped and having to go. I do have to take some of that in consideration, but everybody gets a little bit. I don't expect everybody to be happy. I'm just mindful of those who live there. They don't have too many options. So I will be supporting this amendment.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we need a roll call on the amendment, which everyone understands is the option 2 that Mr. Dreyer has put together.
Point of information.
Yes.
Technically, the motion was
We
the
can reread it.
changes.
I'll reread it.
In the
Not
ordinance, it's the changing in the parking ordinance that necessitates you going with this option.
Yes, so I
That
will
was
reread the
discussion on
amendment to
why,
keep this
but-
moving. Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Parking Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 10 thereof, parking prohibited at any time by amending the following locations, adding 12th Avenue on the north side between 31st Street and 33rd Street, and adding 12th Avenue on the north side from 100 feet east of 34th Street to 36th Street Court. Thank you. Roll call, please. Yes.
Okay, clarification, so that is with parking on the,
Parking on
South
the
side.
Made on the south
south side
Yes.
on
Thank
both
you.
sides of the hill.
Got it.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Alderperson Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Nay.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Nay.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Five ayes, 3 nays.
That amendment passes. So we have discussion on the amended item. Yes, Mr. Timian.
Thank you, Your Honor. The point that we're not interested in 35-year-old traffic studies and opinions, I think is missing the point. And the point is that while I will vote for the amended motion, it is progress. We are once again kicking the can to the next council, as they did 35 years ago. They tried to ban parking, and they did for a while, until it was a split council, 7-7, and the mayor was the deciding vote. They kicked the can down to us. We are doing what has been the recommendation of the engineers and police for years. And now we, by our own admission, acknowledge that this will come back in a year or two. We're just kicking the can down to the next council. And I think if we want to be a city that attracts people, we need to start being, and no longer being a 1950s mill town. Our infrastructure needs to match that. And I'm saddened that we're doing this. I'm happy that we're making progress.
Thank you, Mr. Went.
Just a clarification on a couple of things. One, the parking. If you're removing half of the available parking, that should increase, because the arguments were, well, nobody's using that parking anyway, or there's very few people. Well, if now all of it's on one side of the street, then there should be cars parked there more often. So to equate this to what they were talking about 30 years ago about having parking on both sides, this is half as much parking as there was before. So this is different, and I think that this will be affected differently. Now, that being said, I do have some concerns with the design. I am 100% on board with keeping the parking on that side. This, I do think with the configuration and what the concerns that have been raised a number of times here of when somebody slows down or isn't going fast enough, that people pass out on the outside near the curb, passing them. This design has more than, what would you say, the bike lane was on the north side was 5 foot and a 2 foot buffer or something? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, that's 7 feet, which can fit a car up in it. And then on the other side, same thing, parking and that was 6 foot and a buffer. So you could even pass and not affect the parking cars. And so I think we have too much space on each side of these that doesn't address the concerns which we've heard many times is somebody going too slow, somebody racing up to the outside of them. At least if you had a situation where you had that turn lane, even if it was narrower and everything, then the only place to pass somebody would be up the turn lane, and that is not, I'm not gonna say that's not what somebody will do, because there will be an idiot that does it, but there will be far less people that attempt that than to pass on the right-hand side where you've got 7-8 feet that you can slide by. So I'm approving because of what the motion was. I will hopefully down the road will convince staff to go with a minimalist approach on widths in this area, which will slow things down. It'll meet our policies, and I think will be the solution that works best for the neighborhood.
Thank you. Anything further from the council? Mr. Schmidt?
I think there was one question raised earlier about, okay, so if we leave the parking here, how do we make that decision when we go somewhere else, regardless of whether it's down the road? And I think that's a good point in question. And to me, the real guide is that these are places where there is no other option for long stretches on a big hill. I think it does come to a thing that would have to be a policy decision, and I'm comfortable with that because it is such a unique place with no alleys, no close by, right? If we were talking about 3-4 houses and then a side street, it'd be a whole different conversation. And as we think about those sorts of scenarios, that's how it weighs out to me, and is why I want to make sure we listen, because it is 100% true that these residents are not owed this parking in any legal way, right? It is the whole city's road. But I think that when we still must balance with the reality of when we are not just, taking back something that's a luxury, we're taking back something that does change the functionality of their homes. And while they could work around it, I think it just becomes a very big challenge for many of those people. And some have been in there for a long time.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
I agree with Alderman Schmidt. I mean, it's a quality of life for the residents, and we talk about that all the time. And when these people bought their homes, they knew they didn't have an alley, but they knew they had parking out front. For people who've lived there for a good long time, it's very unfair for the city to come in because we want to provide bike lanes and try to ram everything in and retrofit this tiny little space that is unique because of the way it sits. And when the citizens come down and make it very make us aware that it's really gonna affect them. And, I think we have to listen. And, maybe a bike path this isn't the best place of the thoroughfare to have a bike path. Not that 23rd Avenue is, but, sometimes you just can't have everything. But in this instance, this is the compromise. We still have parking. True, it doesn't slow down like a road diet, but we have road diets in the other part. I think this is the compromise. It's probably the best we can do. And I think as we kick this can down the road, as Alderman Timian said, I think future councils will have other citizens come up and make the same arguments. And I think that the responsible thing is try to be all things to all people. And as Dean said, win, win, win. This is the best we can come up with. That's why I'll support it.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing further, roll call, please. On the amended motion, thank you.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
is that nay or aye, sorry?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Not a
O'Brien?
happy eye, but.
Brian?
Nay.
Waldron,
Nay.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
All right, 6 ayes, 2 nays.
All right,
And that passes.
that motion passes. Thank you. We're on to the consent agenda non-consent agenda resolutions, 19.1.
Council Bill number 1053-2023, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a contribution of $60,000 from Unity Point Health Trinity and authorizing the Director of Engineering to use the funds to offset costs estimated at $100,000 for the installation of sidewalk along the west side of 7th Street from Unity Point Hospital entrance to 43rd Avenue.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by the person Went, seconded by Timian. Discussion. Mr. Went.
I just want to thank staff. I mean, this has been for a few years, and previous staffs, we had asked them multiple times to go and say, hey, you guys want to contribute to this? And we kept being told, no, they're not interested. But I think that they actually never got asked. I appreciate staff actually going and asking, and they contributed $60,000 towards this, which will complete a link that will eventually get people more easily down to Kiwanis Trail and the rest of it. So thank you for following through.
Yes, Mr.
I
Chairman.
would like to second that, Director Dreyer. It's, for those unaware, it's the piece pretty much between John Deere Road going south towards, there is a multi-use path that connects us to Rock Island and then down North Shore Drive as well. So we're connecting pieces, and just the fact that they were willing to chip in also freed up budgetary items for other sidewalks infill projects. So it was a great win for the city.
Thank you. There's nothing, wait, Mr. Schmidt, did you have anything?
Nothing.
Okay. If there's nothing further, roll call, please.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, that motion passes. Council Bill number 1054-2023, a resolution authorizing the Fleet and Facilities Manager to purchase 2 bunker rakes from Deere and Company in Cary, North Carolina for the amount of $36,873.68, utilizing Sourcewell contract number 031121 DAC.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Schmidt, seconded by Moyer. Any questions, comments? Yes?
Yeah,
Mr.
can we get just a quick explanation of what all this is and how, and why we need it?
It's replacement equipment, and it is within budget. Let me pull it up for you.
Yeah, I think there was, it's been delayed being replaced by many years, or
Correct.
both of, yeah.
A lot of our equipment has been delayed. Vehicles as well as non-vehicular equipment has been delayed by several years, in part because of what's going on with the economy. Sourcewell contract, as you know, is a joint purchasing contract, so we don't need to go out for bid for that. And if you take a look at the resolution, you can see the equipment itself, and it's used for maintaining the ball fields.
Yeah.
And we have superb ball fields, so predominantly at Green Valley and at Riverside Park.
Thank you. Anything further?
in Stevens.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Council Bill number 1057-2023, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a service order that is issued pursuant to and subject to the terms and conditions of the professional services agreement between Ansel Glink and City of Moline and Geosyntech Consultants Incorporated and its subsidiaries and affiliates dated September 9th, 2022 for siting application review and site hearing support.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Waldron, seconded by Alderperson Went.
You
Sorry.
want an explanation?
Does anyone need an explanation?
Does anyone, I just asked.
Okay, no,
Okay.
Mr. Schmidt.
Margaret, please let me know if anything I'm asking, because it's over kind of the umbrella of the next several items that are related. So if I cross over something I have to ask on a later one, please let me know. That $75,000 that's listed in the budgeted item here is applying to all 4 of these next items, correct? It's one $75,000 bucket.
That is correct.
And then the other piece of that is some of those items did not include they don't have a specific budget amount, they just have the hourly rates.
Time and material basis, correct.
Do we have an expectation that those will be within that budget or not, or do we not have a,
No crystal ball. And based on our understanding with LRS, should those costs go in excess of the 75, which we doubt, they would step up because it is their $75,000 that is actually paying for these costs at this point.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
we're good.
Mr. Went.
But I guess maybe this is an accounting thing, the $75,000 that's coming in.
It's in already.
To the general fund, right?
In a special account, correct.
Is there the ability, is this TIF eligible expenses?
It's a project, and yes, it probably would be TIF eligible.
So-
Why would we want to use our TIF, there is no TIF money in there.
Well, yeah, but
There's no
we,
TIF.
and I guess maybe this is a thing for
No,
Carol,
it's not.
and I'm sorry I didn't send an email about this before, but it might be eligible for then reimbursement eventually.
Correct, because based upon the project and based upon the agreement the city entered into with LRS, should the project be approved in July, August, whenever the hearings are done, and we'll get to that in my report. But, if we pay it, we can reimburse ourselves out of the increment being generated from the project, which is $350,000 a year for the first 3 years, and then $300,000 thereafter going forward, so more than sufficient resources.
Is there anything we need to amend in this or any of the other 3 to determine that that money is TIF being expended out of future TIF or being loaned to the TIF to then be paid? I guess maybe that's a question for Carol.
We weren't weren't planning on paying it with, as a reimbursable to the TIF.
Well, but that's how the TIF then could reimburse us.
We understand that. Carol, please.
Thank you. We will work through that.
Okay.
And if we need council action to act on that, we'll come back with it. But we can certainly hold that
Earmark it.
invoice in a separate account. And if indeed everything goes through in the fall, then we'll come back to council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very valid point, though, that it could be eligible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything further from the council? So this is 19.3, correct?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Council Bill number 1058-2023, a resolution authorizing the mayor and.
Wait. Aren't we on 10:59 now?
No.
Okay, I just said, or we were on 19.3, which right here says 10:58. What am I looking at? Oh, this one's correct, got it.
Probably the
Thank you.
draft
Yeah,
agenda from
mhm.
before you.
It's okay, thank you.
A resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an engagement letter with Freeborn and Peters LLP to represent the city of Moline, Illinois, in connection with the proposed siting of a transfer station by Lakeshore Recycling Systems LLC in the city.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion by Alderperson Went, seconded by Timian. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, that motion passes. Council Bill number 1059-2023, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a proposal with Walter S. Willis to provide waste management consulting services to the city of Moline.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion by Alderperson Went, seconded by Alderperson Williams. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Council Bill number 1060-2023, a resolution approving a proposal from Klein, Thorpe, and Jenkins for the services of Dennis G. Walsh for the position of a hearing officer to the city of Moline, Illinois, in connection with the filing of an application by Lakeshore Recycling Systems LLC for site application of a proposed waste transfer station.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Went, seconded by Alderperson Macias. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderperson Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that is all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Okay. Couple updates from me. I mentioned last time we met that we were hosting a meeting with 3 a.m. license holders, liquor license holders. That went very well last week. Chief was with us. Margaret was with us. And so we are continuing to work on partnership so that they can really keep our entertainment spaces safe, those business owners. Also, on Friday, we had our Big Seven meeting with, we participated in strategic planning hour for the Quad City Health Initiative, which is an independent group, but is supported, I am the rep for Bi-State, et cetera. And that was very informative in terms of helping identify, for example, mental health resources is a huge need in the whole entire Quad Cities. How might Quad City Health Initiative really actually help move the ball on that? Both hospital networks are a part of that. It was a very good discussion. And then, of course, we had our Bi-State Big Seven monthly lunch. And there, I double-checked that question we had about the DSIP grant for the work we were trying to do on the Arsenal Viaduct. And yes, Davenport did apply for something, but what's come out of all the discussion is that it's actually great that they're applying and we're applying, and is there one
Rock
other
Island.
person? Rock
Rock
Island
Island.
is applying for something at their entrance, I believe, because they want to see more work done over here. right? In this location, am I
In the
saying that
Midwest.
correct? In the Midwest, because there's so many bases in the South and other places, so it's actually just fine. Was what we were told. And then lastly, I will, based on a suggestion from the public and things working out logistically, I will be going to the beginning of the boys basketball banquet on Sunday to make a proclamation, just celebrating their teamwork, hard work, resilience, and the pride that they've brought to not only our city, but the Quad Cities. So that feels like a nice cap off of celebrating that recent event. That's all I have. Mr. Williams.
I was able to put Moline in for Iowa during my March Madness bracket, so I was immediately thrown out, but I had them going all the way to win the championship, so I still feel like a winner for that. When we go to this 12th Avenue remodel, whatever it ends up being, maybe the chief would consider putting the Bearcat out there to help slow traffic.
In the center turn.
Something to think about.
They hit that thing.
Mr. Macias.
Thank you, Your Honor. This Saturday, Spring Forward is a summer learning program that started in Rock Island. They've actually done some work in East Moline, and they're going to start in Moline this summer with one school. They're starting this year. So there's a fundraiser at Mercado. It's from 7 to 9 o'clock. So if anybody's interested, I think this is a great thing for just our communities and for kids during the summer. I've always really, at Lincoln Irving, we tried doing something like that when my daughter was there, and it was very beneficial, got the kids involved, and so just letting people know that they're moving into Moline with one school, and hopefully they can do all schools at some point. So Spring Forward, listen for it. You need more information, let me know, and I'll get it to you.
Thank you. Mr. Wine.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of things. One, as a follow-up from last week's conversation about right-of-way and everything. I know we were trying to keep to a time frame, but one thing that we didn't talk about was the wires and stuff in front of stoplights and those sorts of things. And I just want to make sure that that gets into these changes and updates, because I drove by the one picture that I showed you guys where the wire is going through the stoplight fan thing, and it's still there. And so, we need to have some teeth so that we can actually get these people to move these things. This idea that the federal regulations or Mid-American spreadsheet is going to get things changed isn't happening. So the next is, I had a conversation with Ryan regarding the Banch property. If you guys recall, that was on 5th Avenue and 23rd Street. We wanted to save the building, wound up having to demo it. We had done, and I went back and I looked through, we had done an RFP to see if anybody would be able to develop it as it was, and we didn't get anything. But I thought at the time we had also given direction, say, hey, once we get it down, let's do an RFP to develop that site. Well, Ryan had said during the turnover or whatever, that never happened. So we've just got basically this corner lot that could be developed down as part of our strategic plan and all that stuff, and we're not marketing it. We haven't done an RFP to get developers or anything like that. I had somebody call me who was interested in developing it, and he's like, I get the runaround and nobody knows what to do, and they, so I guess I'm not sure how to go about this. Is this just a reminder that we should do an RFP, or can we direct staff to do this, or do we have to put it on the agenda?
We just have to have staff circle back around that and get all the pieces in order and bring it back to us.
Mayor, this is the, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, it's not Ryan. I mean, it was before.
This is the first I'm hearing of it, so Ryan, you and I will get together and we'll discuss this, and then we'll discuss it as part of the master plan, because it's part of the master planning area that we're going to spend a handsome sum actually preparing.
And it's a super important corner.
This is part of that plan, correct?
Thank you.
And then the last, I missed my daughter's soccer game, but she scored and had 2 assists, so I was here with you guys.
Mr. Timian.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just for context, that I mentioned this to Ryan. Demoing that building was like the second meeting that we had of council. So it's understandable why it kind of fell away. I would like to open up a newspaper from the 80s to
Stop.
The library had a fantastic event over the weekend. They had Pokemon Day. And my son went and they showed silhouettes of Pokemon. It was a scavenger hunt. They had to find them. They had to name that Pokemon. And then they got a pin when they got enough. And the answer was Charmander. He got a Charmander pin. It's great. But I just want to commend the library for continuing to have great activities that engages people of all ages in the community. And I think is an extremely valuable asset. So I just wanted to say that.
Mr. Moyer.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. O'Brien.
Nothing,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Waldron.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, Alderman Timian actually stole part of my piece about the Pokemon Day, but in addition to that, I think that the library board has also been working very hard about what to do with the outside space that has been developed. And I've been at the meetings as the liaison, and it's been a while since we've talked about it. So I just wanted to share that has been out for RFP for the firm that they're gonna be using for getting that design together. I think they have selected the firm, and they're gonna be now talking about what the design is actually gonna be and how that's going to be playing out. So that is moving through that process. I think that they are gonna make some great choices about, how to make that a space with maybe some outdoor venue, but also some interactive places like in the library where kids can go and really matching those pieces together. So there's not a lot to report except that they have been working very diligently to move that through the process. And then I'd like to put a note of thanks to our fire department, and specifically a crew that helped give a tour to a group of Cub Scouts last evening. That may be it's my second favorite meeting I've had as an older person. I was attending as a parent, but the crew did an excellent job touring down at Center Station and was very much appreciative of doing that. And they said, hey, more groups, tell them to come, and trying to push that through. So I just think it's an important thing. One of the things that really resonated with me is they went and they put on the fire suits, but then they demonstrated, if there's a fire, this is how we're going to come in your house. And I had a couple of the first graders in our group that were actually scared of the firefighters, and it really was impressive to see, this is not to be scary. And a couple of the kids who warmed up and said, okay, I get this and know what it is. That's great. It was a wonderful experience, and thank you to Chief Reaganweather for helping to set that and the firefighters who made it happen.
Thank you. Mr. Vitas.
Having been a Cub Scout, I didn't have the ability to do what you did with your Cub Scouts. But this is a good place to start the recruiting, Chief. Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. Because once they get into the military, they don't necessarily want to come back and be firefighters or police officers. So just a few things real quick. At the next meeting, November 11th, we'll bring the final piece of the puzzle together for our LRS in terms of the consultants we need, and that will be the traffic engineer. Been proving difficult to find one that's available that doesn't conflict out. So we're working on getting a traffic engineer. That'll come up at the next meeting. Just to give you a heads up as well, I had a lengthy discussion with Walter Willis today, so I'm just going to share some information with you in terms of process and timing. And I think that's important for you because this will become a project that you're going to have to do something about in the summer. And people take vacations. And because people take vacations, I need to get this out there now, okay? So you'll be getting a memo to confirm and probably a doodle poll as well. But right now, what we're looking at is we're looking at the earliest date that the hearings can begin will be June the 5th. So June 5th. I know you feel real bad, Alderman Waldron. I saw that. I have an eye right there. Okay, so that's when the hearings will start. A decision has to happen by August 30th. So August 30th is the drop dead date for the project. July, based upon when the hearings are held, becomes a silent period. It's a 30-day comment period. So we're going to go from hearings in June to a silent period following the hearings for 30 days, followed by an actual decision made by council at some point. hearing dates that are being tossed around right now, because we can't use Tuesdays, we use Tuesdays. Hearings could be in 4-hour blocks. We don't know what to expect in terms of how many people will come to testify, right? So we're looking at the 7th and the 8th, the 14th, the 15th, 21st, 22nd, 28th, and 29th. So it's literally every Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday that month is what we're looking at. The mayor and the city council do not have to be present. But if you're not present, then you're expected then to review the record, meaning the transcript. And it's going to last for a day, day and a half, 8 to 12 hours or longer. You can imagine how much you're going to be reading. It's also an optical thing. I'm just sharing that with you just professionally. It's an optical thing if you're not there. And that's pretty much it. RICMA is going to need to make a decision in April. They're going to be out of time. So they have to make a decision 30 days before the hearings begin. So just to give you a heads up, that's what we know right now. And if you have any other questions, you can always ask.
Two quick questions about that.
Yeah.
Will there be an audio, or is it just written transcript?
It will probably be both.
Okay, that's great. And the public
Like a
can
podcast.
attend, so Mike Waldron, citizen at large, can still come.
Yeah, that's what Pat said. He was gonna save me a seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he won't be fishing.
Question, Mr. Schmidt.
Just that on the list of dates we're looking at, can we get a note on that sooner rather than later? For ones that are 100% for sure when they're gonna have to happen, or those that are just like tentative hold
There'll be
dates?
an email going out and we're gonna basically doodle poll everybody.
Okay.
And then we need to, because we also have to share those dates with LRS, and LRS we have to bring these calendars together so that both sides can be physically present, and then we can advertise and do what we need to do.
Send it to the candidates too.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you.
Is there anything else from staff? Okay, public comment? Yes, Mr. Lunkin.
Keep it short, sorry. I didn't know that there was gonna be an amendment, otherwise I would have brought this up earlier. So I have some concerns of consolidating the parking to one side of the road. Specifically, if you're going to be driving eastbound on 12th Avenue. What you're going to do is you're condensing 40-some parking spaces into 19, so those spaces will be utilized more often. And on a single lane road going eastbound, you're gonna have cars parallel parking into the road, which is gonna further back up that traffic right immediately after an intersection. So now you're gonna have cars at a stop sign looking to go, and then realizing a car is trying to parallel park and creating more congestion in that area. That is a fear, I think, based on the amended plan that you guys have, so I would strongly urge you to reconsider it and maybe speak with the engineer here on what that looks like. I know that was his alternative, but again, I think that could be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, there will be 7 feet of bike lane and buffer before the through lane for them to.
You can follow up
their
with him
path.
separately. No executive session, correct? I need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Alderman
Second.
Schmidt and Went.
And we got 3 weeks
All in
before we meet again.
favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.